This meeting is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cons,
Here.
Mr. Wilburn,
Here.
Mrs. Yanez,
Here.
Mrs. Shandy.
Here. Mrs. Ruckman, are there any updates to the agenda?
No, there are no updates to the agenda.
Are there any items to be added? May we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cons,
Aye.
Mr. Wilburn,
Aye.
Mrs. Yanez,
Aye.
Mrs. Shandy.
Aye. Aye, sorry. All right, so just direction for us. We're going to go round robin throughout the question list. We'll start to my right with Director Cons, then Director Yanez, then Director Wilburn, back to me, and on through our list. So you know what question you will have each time. That brings us to our first finalist, Mrs. Susan Payne. Please come to the mic. And make sure your mic works.
Sure. Is that good? Can you hear me?
Yep, and if you want to pull it closer, make it comfortable for you.
Okie dokie.
All right, Ms. Cons, whenever you're ready.
All right. Welcome, Ms. Payne. Why are you interested in being a D20 board member? And what experiences do you have that would make you the best candidate for a board member position?
My interest is primarily because I've had the opportunity, one, to live here my whole life in Colorado. I've been in Colorado Springs since I was 1 year old, so this is my community. My greatest desire in life was always to be a mom, to be a parent, and I have 3 children of my own that went through District 20 schools, K through graduation, and went on to very successful lives after that. So I have always been involved. My background is in 28 years in law enforcement. I was with the Colorado Springs Police Department. I was a detective, public information officer, team leader for hostage crisis negotiation, but I always had a passion for the schools here. We did a lot of fundraisers, a lot of work, and we did a lot of safety work in this community with the 17 school districts and the many law enforcement agencies. And a lot of people know this, but after Columbine, I was brought up to the state to assist with the Columbine Commission and to work to understand what might have prevented that or what we could do better moving forward. I became the first special agent in charge of school safety for the state of Colorado. I went on to be the executive director for the Colorado Attorney General's Office of Safe Community, Safe Schools, but I also founded a nonprofit called Safe to Tell, which was the ability for young people to speak up and have a voice, or adults to recognize warning signs. But in that role, I had the opportunity to serve on many boards. I was the chair of the School Safety Committee for District 20 during my children's reign here. That resulted in hiring a security director and bringing in armed security. And that was many years ago. I have to start speaking in decades. But I've also been through the CEO training with El Pomar, so chief executive training. I ran my own nonprofit. I've served on boards like Kid Power, but I also was the president of the Homeland Security Board for White Collar Investigative Network. And so I do, number one, besides all of that, I just have a passion for children, and I know that schools, the safer our schools are and the higher achieving that our children are, it's the better our community will be. So we want to see them be successful. I want to see them learn at their highest level. And I just want to kind of get back to my community, and thought this might be a way that I could provide some opportunity to help lead District 20 into the next few years.
Okay, how would you describe the ideal relationship between the board and the superintendent?
Well, I would say that number one, it has to be transparent. They have to work in collaboration and partnership. There's so many hours of so many days that go into leading a school district. I've seen it firsthand. I've worked at the cabinet level in a school district after I retired from law enforcement. And I think it's so important that there is trust and confidence in who leads that district, but also that school board provides the opportunity to really set the vision with the superintendent and bring the feedback from the community in which they serve. in our current world, that school board also can put on guardrails, like what is our current culture and climate? What are the things that are happening at the national level, at the state level? And how do we do things through things like policy? How do we develop those things that are strategic so that it helps us to anticipate what our vulnerabilities might be, but also to highlight our strengths? And how do we prepare the district for the future based on those things? I have a very multidisciplinary approach by nature. I think it's really important that we're multidisciplinary in bringing together people from a board of directors that can kind of represent different walks of life, different viewpoints, and that we can provide that vision for our superintendent. So and I would also say it's important to understand our community values and expectations, because that also is what we want to do. We want to be the highest achieving district here. We want to set those expectations high. And I think that that really served my kids well. And I hope that that continues long into the future.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Payne. Third question is a hypothetical scenario. A parent sees you in a grocery store, tells you about an incident where their child was bullied at school. What would your response or action be?
Well, I have a little bit of experience with that because I kind of have this thing on my forehead that says it's safe to tell me. But with all sincerity, that does happen often, and it happens all over the country. So I think it's something that anybody that's a leader in a district has to be prepared to answer and understand, because we take bullying very seriously. But also we have to do that with a lot of sincerity, with the ability to understand that they're talking to you in a confidential nature, and provide them really strategic guidance about how they might voice those concerns back at their local level, right there back at their teacher level, if necessary to the principal level, to really encourage them to advocate for their child at that level. And if they needed to go to a higher level, provide them guidance on how they might have to do that at the district level if they don't feel like they're getting the response they need. And often it might not even be something that was reported at their school, because there's a lot of concerns with reporting bullying. And that's where I would also provide them the opportunity, like, to understand that there is a protected means of reporting through Safe to Tell, if they felt that they needed to do it in confidence or in a protected way to get the information to their local level, and how that would work. So that's kind of how I would look at that, because operationally that really falls under district leadership to manage bullying and to manage those concerns that are happening in the classroom level. And it really doesn't need to come to the board level unless there's something that they feel very dissatisfied that it was happened through all of the levels of the chain of command that they could have approached.
Thank you. Tell us about a time when you were on a high functioning team and how you contributed to their success as a member on this team.
Sure. I'd say I've had the opportunity to work on so many teams. I love being part of a team. I think that's one of the best parts of being in a career in law enforcement or schools. You get to work with team members, and you get to have common objectives and goals, and people have your back. But most recently, I'd say in the last 5 years, there was a team of us that worked on a specialized training for school resource officers in particular. We took the best practice findings of the last 25 years since the Columbine tragedy, and we put together a very high level training. That's a 2-day training for the NASRO organization, and that's called Project Unite. But it really teaches them the fundamentals of keeping schools safe, and how that involves culture and climate, and how it involves early reporting and identification, and how it works to advocate for victims. And then lastly, out of that, a team of us authored the Law Enforcement Preliminary Investigative Checklist, which meant that officers in the field now have just released December of 2024, a checklist for when they get a report about a concern of someone's safety or someone that's making any type of a malicious threat towards a school or towards another student, and it helps guide them in the questions and the information they have to obtain in the field and how they would then take that information and get it to their local schools or their multidiscipline team if they have a behavioral threat assessment team, so that they are sharing that information in a way to protect children and to protect our schools.
Thank you.
Next question. What would you do as a board member if the whole board votes and makes a decision that you fundamentally disagree with? Describe what your follow-up actions would entail.
Well, anytime you've been on a board, I mean, not everybody has 100% vote or an agreement on everything, but what I believe is the most important thing is that everyone feels that they were heard and that they were able to express what their opinions were, to be able to research the issue at hand and to provide their voice at that time. There's an appropriate way to do that. And then when the decision is reached, it's important to be part of that team and to move forward. Because the decision was made. I mean, everybody had all of the information, the decision was made, and that's where we need to now move forward and look at other things that we need to address. And I would just add, it happens all the time, not just in schools, but also in the public sector, in the private sector, and in the emergencies and in crisis. We have to do that sometimes in crisis situations in an incident command post, like, are we going in? What are we doing? What's next? So sometimes it can be very rapid, and sometimes we can slow things down because we have to have a very thoughtful approach to our decision making.
Okay. What is your view of policy IJL 1, 2, R, and E regarding library books? What would you seek to change or keep the same?
Well, that was very interesting reading. But I do think in sitting through many of the board meetings, we've heard a lot about books in our library. And most recently, I've had the opportunity to visit with the superintendent from Elizabeth Schools, who's also a friend and colleague of mine. And it's very interesting what they're facing that could go all the way up to the Supreme Court level based on the books in a library and their decision to either remove them or to place them. I think this is going to be an extremely big issue at the national level, and our neighbors just to the north are facing it head on. And so therefore do we have to. When I looked at the policy, I was very impressed to see the many updates, because I have reviewed those policies in other districts that I've worked in, but seeing that and also comparing it to what's at hand, it's important that the policy that we follow really protects us before, during, and after. And I would say the before part would be when I see the policy updates that have occurred in 2024, that really brings a multidiscipline approach to include parents in the review of those materials. But also some of the legal things that I researched was, you know, the board does have the power to exclude immoral or pernicious, I can't even say the word pernicious. Can somebody help me with that? Pernicious, thank you. Pernicious materials and books. And I think that it is important that we take that very seriously because, you know, we are school libraries. And I think it's really important when we look at age appropriate level of what we provide to children. There's still public libraries, there's still the World Wide Web, there's still what they can find in the home. But I did like that there was a multidiscipline approach that included parents, 2 board members if there's a concern of something that's in the library. I really thought the policy, I'll be really curious to continue to assess that and see how that works moving forward as we face these challenging times and monitor the Supreme Court level if this goes up that high.
Is that me?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Payne.
Mhm.
What's your understanding of our policy related to clubs and schools? What would you desire to change or to keep the same?
Well, here's one where I think following the policy is really important because the policy is very strong. When I review the the policy, it's very clear to me that at the beginning of each school year, there's an application process for clubs and schools. If it's curriculum-based and related to a class content, then there's somebody that's assigned to the club. They can also advertise daily announcements, social media posters, and common areas in the school. But that really changes when it's non-curricular. And I think that the policy is going to really protect anyone if they follow it. However, if you start to get complacent or ad hoc in what you choose as a club, then you have to kind of go across the board. I mean, that could mean we could have a club on witchcraft or something like that if we start allowing those things. So non-curricular clubs, I think it's very important to stick to the policy of how they can be advertised and supported in the district. And I would just really encourage everyone to follow the policy.
Thank you. Academy District 20 continues to review and improve overall security in our schools. What are some of your ideas related to school security, and how would you, or how could strengthen or improve security in our schools?
Well, when we look at District 20, I'm very proud as I go around the country, because I go all over the country to work with school boards and school superintendents and state level on keeping schools safe and keeping our children and our teachers safe as well. But I do think it's important to have a comprehensive look at what safety and security means. I'm very proud with what District 20 does. Now we can say we have armed security in our elementary, middle, and high schools. I don't think there's any other school district in Colorado that I know of that can say that. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but when we look at that kind of investment, those are the things we're seeing that have come about legislatively in Texas and in Florida through very different strategies. So I do think we're leading the way there. And when we look at safety and security, I think we have to have a mindset. And that also kind of takes me back to that last thought, because as we look at what children have access to in schools, that would mean I really do struggle with the exposure and contagion aspect of when kids can be exposed to violent, how to make explosive devices, how suicide works, the things that could really have a contagion effect do concern me. But when we look at safety and an upstream approach to prevention and safety, we have the armed security, but we also need to have on the front end, how do we intervene with someone that's struggling, and what are the indicators and warning signs? So that means, in my purview, is a very strong strategy of behavioral threat assessment. It's very important to know that if we do need to intervene with somebody that is expressing concerning behavior, and what that age appropriate level is that we have staff that's trained in those approaches, and that actually comes from the Secret Service. I'm wearing my pin because this is the Secret Service pin, and it is the National Threat Assessment Center. And I've had the honor to be an expert and serve with them over the last 20, I guess I should just say 25 years, but specifically in most recent years in the Protecting America Schools in the aftermath of Parkland, where we have published studies, but also toured nationally and provided training to law enforcement in schools and school boards on how to keep schools safe. And that really is a comprehensive level. And while I can highlight that I think District 20 does an excellent job, I would be remiss if I said it does a perfect job, because it is never perfect. We have to constantly look at how we improve. And any day, something bad can happen here. Crisis happens every day in school, and we know it. We've seen it, any of us that have worked here or worked in schools. So making sure that we're well prepared and that we're always on the cutting edge of how we prepare our staff and how we lead to make sure that we're doing everything to make sure that our students are safer, our schools are safer, and our staff is safer. But we can never be 100% sure, and we always have to remember that, and that's why we strive to be the best that we can be. That was probably a lot. No.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Payne. Student achievement is a priority for D20. What is your understanding of student achievement in D20? And how would you support our district to increase student achievement and growth?
You know, I've thought a lot about that because in the time that I've been kind of sitting in on your board meetings and looking at, I was a little surprised because, you know, my son went to the Air Force Academy. That's not easy to get into, especially on the local level. My second daughter has a master's. My youngest went to SMU on a scholarship. I mean, they really came out and did so well academically at District 20. I couldn't have been more impressed with the teachers. But what I would say my research hat tells me a little more in my investigation of this is I'm really intrigued by looking at, and this is with no intent that you may have already looked at this, but I really look at the science of reading. When I look at the math and reading scores that have been published and how we compare to other districts in the state, I did a little research and I thought the science of reading in K-3 specifically really emphasizes phonics. One of my colleagues on the national level is a subject matter expert on brain development in children. And I think that takes a lot of that into account. And I, right away after I was looking, and again, I haven't approached anyone on this, but I thought I would be really intrigued to assess where we are as a district and to bring some of those concepts to light that we might look at when it comes to the science of reading and how that really works on preparing our staff in the K-3 to really understand the phonics. And I'm sure they already do, and we have interventionists in the districts, but making sure that we're supporting the professional development and growth of our teachers on the strategies of not only the science of reading, but the science of learning in general and brain development. And along with that, you can never underemphasize how we develop our staff to understand how to best engage our students. Because in the end, every student is an individual with individual learning styles, and it's important that they can grow at their highest potential. And that's such an individual thing that a teacher brings to the mix. But I sometimes, in my years of being a parent, felt like teachers sometimes felt underserved in getting really the quality of professional development that they might deserve. So I would really be supportive, or I'd really be interested in looking at the assessment of that professional development growth and really looking how we can take then measurable outcomes on whatever it is we're doing as a district to make sure that we're investing in things that make common sense, but scientific sense, but then also save us dollars and cents. So when we're looking at yes, we might need individual programs, but what could we as a district really focus on as core strategies for our teaching staff, especially in those K-3 years? Because to me, when kids get behind and aren't learning at grade level and the years, they don't build the foundation for the next years that come, and we're not setting them up for success. And again, I know you all know this. I'm just saying I did a little bit of research, and that's my thought process on that specific topic.
And I just want to give a time check that we're right at 21 minutes with you and doing great with
Okay, thank you.
six questions left.
D20 is a policy governance district. What is your understanding of policy governance and the importance of the board ends? What role would you as a Board of Education member take in accomplishing these ends?
So, I mean, really a policy governance, the school board sets the vision. We set that based on this multidisciplinary approach. We bring back our community values and we provide oversight to the district, while that's the superintendent is really the one responsible for those day-to-day operations and creating the infrastructure to support that vision, and to make sure that, you know, we are succeeding. And does the data show it? I mean, do we look at then what are the measurable outcomes to say, where do we need to do better? Where can we look at those revisions? When I look at all of this, I do think, like, as a board, and when we're a policy governance board, and what I liked about the library book revisions is it did include a component where the board serves on that process. Now that was maybe after the complaint was made, but I do think we could consider maybe more board in the review process, or maybe one board member assigned to assist in what comes before it's presented to the board in an open meeting.
Everybody ready? 11, the Global In Statement identifies knowledge, skills, and character as priorities across our district. How will you support the district's continued work with character education?
Well, I think character education is so important, and I would say more focus on the basics of character education, an emphasis on personal accountability, development, and resiliency. I also, as you can see, this is probably a common thing, but I really do want to see measurable outcomes based on the priority, and based on our vision, to say, is this being met? Do we feel like we're able to develop that character right along with that academic achievement? And what is the framework that supports that across the board as a large district like this? I would add that research focuses on high expectations. Kids that have high expectations and academic achievement and success goals, they really do rise to their expectation. It may be in a personal way. And I really do want to honor that, because while we might have our highest achieving valedictorians, growth and learning is a very personal thing, and there are so many kids that do learn at their highest potential that we have to be so proud of, but we can really determine that through measurable outcomes and see that their journey includes achievement as they grow, and acknowledge that and praise them for that.
Thank you. How will you work to build trust and confidence among all stakeholders in Academy District 20? Give an example of how you have created this type of culture in another setting.
Well, I think culture and climate is really important, and it's a framework even in building safer schools for tomorrow. But I do think transparency is part of that. We have to be very transparent. We need to have a climate of respect. And I think professionalism at the board, we have to set the standard high and make sure that when someone's watching this meeting, that we represent this district just the way, and that children look up to us and see that that's the way we respond. And because the only thing we can do is control our response. So I think it's important to encourage the sharing of details and context, but it is important to be transparent. I would like to see us, even in just this time that I've been doing this, have some ways where we could have facilitated community discussions as a board. And this probably comes from my days of relationship-based law enforcement, where we would do coffee and donuts. Is so predictable, but really getting community together so that we could have two-way dialogue and listen. And I got to serve on the DAC committee. I got to do a lot of things where I could have my voice heard, but not all parents can. So I think that there's a way that we could have more community member meetings where there could be better two-way dialogue. I plan to be pretty forthcoming on any of my issues or any of my position on issues, but even if we don't agree, it's important to understand why we don't agree or why we have different perspectives, because that can allow everybody to move on and we can focus on the next steps.
Thank you. What role do charter schools play within the public school system? What would your stance be as a board member regarding support of charter schools?
Well, I think there's sometimes confusion on charter schools, but we can clear that up right here for everybody that's listening. But I do think it's important to know that charter schools are publicly funded schools, and they obtain their charter through either a district or a board. And so it's important to understand that some charter schools go independently through the Charter School Institute, but if the charter is obtained through your district, they are one of your charter schools, and there are certain things that I think a charter school has to maintain consistently with the district, or they can put us in a lot of legal jeopardy. And some of those things include safety and security. And my perspective on that is that there has to be consistency within those things. But charter schools really, what was I going to say on charter schools? They really do provide parents and students with options, and they provide them with that choice, which I think is really important. And you can also evaluate, what is their success? They take a different approach to what they're doing, but are they meeting their academic standards? Are they succeeding in those things? they're usually more targeted on what the students might be wanting or what the parents might be needing. And it allows them to, exercise their choice in choosing what school their children go to. And one of the things I like about District 20 is that doesn't just pertain to charter schools, that's also included district-wide. So that's provided those options to parents and families, depending on where you work. It may not be close to where you live, and it might provide you those options to choose from.
Okay. Give an example of how you have built strong community partnerships in your past and the actions you would take as a board member to connect with community partners in District 20.
So I would say in District 20 specifically, the first thing that comes to mind is we experienced it directly impacted me, families, friends. One of the highest rates of youth suicide at a time that my children went to school here. And we started to see a pattern of occurrences. And really, one of the things that I did is I came and met with the school superintendent and the board, and I established a meeting across the street at the fire department and set up a room much like this with name plaques for the sheriff, the chief, the coroner, public health, asked them to come. Many of them said they could send a lieutenant. I'm telling a funny story about Bill Elder because he said, I'm sending a lieutenant. And I said, that's great. The more the merrier, but your seat will still be there with your name on it. And I have to give Bill Elder, our sheriff came, our district attorney came, our chief of police came, our coroner came, our director of public health came, because this was a community-wide issue. And it was so important that we addressed what we could do better as a community and how we could protect children and how we could do better in the aftermath. So a lot of great things came out of that. Media training as a PIO. We did a lot of training for the media here on how they would report things to reduce the exposure and contagion. And obviously in Colorado, we really worked on the No Notoriety campaign. But also with our faith-based leaders, we just really brought everyone together. And I think that had a lot of healing and a lot of efforts moving forward. And we still continue to monitor those numbers and our efforts in prevention to this day and help other communities that have gone through similar experiences. Overall, I would say it was very successful in the healing. And we as a group from District 20 had the opportunity to present a case in CASB and even in other states about kind of what we went through as a district and even surrounding districts. It wasn't just us, but it was a leadership role we took, and it involved key stakeholders and a community response.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that we did not ask, and seeing as how we're about 11 minutes ahead of the clock, if you have any questions for us?
I would ask you, what do you see as your top 3 challenges moving forward?
Great question. Who wants to share?
Financial is always one. As everybody knows, teachers are underpaid, districts are behind in maintenance. I mean, figuring out how, when, and where to best spend limited resources is constant.
Can I have a follow-up on that one specifically? Because I do have a question on that. Since I get to ask a question, that does bring about like where we are as a nation and as a state and how dollars are assigned to school districts. And looking at our, I know that this district has fought some of those battles at the state level to bring attention to those things. But do we see a pathway forward legislatively on that could help us with the funding thing, or are we waiting for the national level decisions and how that'll come down to the state level?
I'm going to let Superintendent Haberer answer that question.
Yeah, in general, we're really still waiting on the federal government, there's been things that have been put out, but we're really taking our direction from CDE, from Dr. Susana Cordova, who is the state commissioner for education. And she sends out a memo like once a week to kind of tell us where we're at with things. So we're still kind of waiting to see what actually happens with the funding at a federal level. I think at the state level, we did have a victory. I think this year that the funding, instead of the governor proposed, there would be no averaging for the for funding for schools, which would have negatively impacted us, but really hit especially the small rural districts. And I know that we as board members, myself, I was at the Capitol 3 times, and I want to really say a kudos to Senator Lundeen, because in talking with him by the 3rd time, I think he even was in an article where he supported going to 4-year averaging and then kind of phasing that down to less years of averaging. And averaging is important because our enrollment can kind of fluctuate. And we don't know until May, right, is when oftentimes when the education bill gets passed, where we know exactly what our funding is going to be, but we have to make those decisions back in like January, February, even December as we're putting that forward. So that's another reason why the averaging is so important, one of many. So I think that that was a positive. There's also a new financial formula, and I think that what they landed on for this year into next is going to be helpful. There's like a hold harmless clause that's in there. So I think there's just definitely, like every year, uncertainty in what the future budgets will be. We were told by our lobbyists that, you know, even for them to balance the state budget this time, they were taking away, they used a lot of maybe one-time money. And so if things don't improve into next year and the one-time money has gone down,
Yeah.
you know, what will the state need to use at that point? So those are some of the conversations we've had.
No, thank you.
I'll just add on a few of the opportunities. I'm not sure what word you used that I see. Parental responsibilities, not just rights. I'm a big advocate for engaging parents and families more in partnering with our teachers. And like you said, the basic character education is a strong push of mine, embedded within core curriculum. Student behavior and how sometimes, honestly, staff is handcuffed. It's a safety issue a lot of times too. So student behavior, and then staff training and retention.
I'll jump into so attracting and retaining teachers. Nationally, we know that it's an issue. I became a teacher because of my teachers. So staying competitive with pay, comps, benefit packages. We had an education student signing day, which was really special to attend. Things like that encourage the next generation of teachers. I think that's something we need to be continually working at.
No, thank you for all of those. I think all of those things meet the type priorities, but I do think how we retain the professional teachers that we have and the quality teachers that we have is going to continue to be a challenge. And I know part of it's financial, but part of it is also how we, hopefully make them love it here so that they don't seek employment elsewhere, because I know that's part of the problem. Also, the last thing I would say is that, when we're looking at special ed and needing staffing some of those positions and how we creatively recruit those people. I love the idea for the teacher signing day. I think there's other ways we can do that. I know UCCS is graduating for the first time. I think UNC, I think they exceeded UCCS, let me say that correctly. UCCS exceeded UNC in the graduation of maybe teachers that were hired statewide. It might have been just a data point, but it is important to know that we have that coming out of our local institution.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. Any other directors have anything? We good? Okay, very good. We thank you so much,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Payne. We are going to take a 5-minute break, Mark. At that point, let's see what time it is now. It is 4:39. So we'll take a 5-minute break now, and then it'll be up to Mr. Waldrop if he wants to wait until 4:45 or if we start in 5 minutes. So a 5-minute break. We'll start in 5 minutes, he says. Okay, 5-minute break. Thank you. We're going to wait for Superintendent Haber to return, then we'll start.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the water, by the way, too. I was like, where's the drinking fountain?
Perfect. Same questions every time. We'll just keep it the same order. That way everything's fair.
$15 more applicants. It's gonna be a long day.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waldrop, for being here tonight. We're going to proceed in the same order that we did last time, starting to my right with Mrs. Collins and so on and so forth around the circle. So thank you.
All right, thank you for being here. Question number 1, why are you interested in being a D20 board member? What experiences do you have that would make you the best candidate for a board member position?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for my wife for being here to support me today as well. So it's nice. So one of the reasons why I'd be interested in being a D20 school member is I've really had a heart for service to others for many, many years, ever since I first joined the military back in '98. Yeah, I went off to serve my country. I re-enlisted after 9/11 to continue that service, and I've just really had a passion for serving people ever since then. I got out of the service, I decided to become a clinical psychologist, and that's what I do currently. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist at the VA, and I just really have a passion for seeing people thrive. And my specialty area is PTSD. I'm a PTSD specialist. So I really love to see people come from where they're at and be able to kind of build their lives and thrive. And I think those are also some of the skills that make me a very qualified member to be on the board.
How would you describe the ideal relationship between the board and the superintendent?
Yeah, well, I really see the ideal relationship between the board and the superintendent being really collaborative and kind of keeping each other accountable. I think the school board, kind of our job is to be able to kind of, synthesize the values and things that are important to our community and stakeholders, and be able to kind of communicate those things and kind of achievable goals for the superintendent to be able to achieve. And then, and by that, I actually mean kind of achievable goals. I think sometimes there's been some challenges trying to say, well, what is it we're trying to accomplish, and how can we kind of actually accomplish something that's meaningful and make that realistic in some way? So I think that's kind of one of the really big roles of the school board, to be able to characterize those things, kind of determine what those objectives are, trying to communicate those to the superintendent in a way that is actually achievable in a reasonable manner, and then holding the superintendent accountable for that. And then, of course, the superintendent being able to give, the ability to achieve those goals as he or she feels fit. And also to be able to hold the board accountable as well. It's like, hey, if you want me to try to accomplish these things, how can I actually do that in some way that I can get practical in some way? So that's how I kind of see a ideal kind of relationship between the two.
You have to forgive me, I'm a slow writer. Okay, thank you, Mr. Waldrop. Oh, by the way, so in one place we've got WALDRUP and REP. Which is it?
REP.
REP.
Yes,
Thank you.
Romeo Echo Papa. And my title is officially doctor, but that's fine. That's pretty common.
Thanks, Doc.
No worries.
Number 3 is a hypothetical scenario. A parent sees you in a grocery store, tells you about an incident where their child was bullied at school. What would your response or reaction be?
Well, I think my initial reaction would be about validating their distress of having something like this happening. I think it probably comes naturally being a psychologist. And then trying to figure out too, kind of, well, what's kind of going on with that situation as best I can in a setting like a grocery store where it's unexpected. So there's going to be limited kind of confidentiality, things like that in a public setting like this. And then trying to in many ways, I think about trying to encourage this parent to try to seek the lowest level of remediation as possible. So hopefully see if they've addressed it with their principal, with any teachers that might be kind of associated with it or be aware of the bullying that's kind of going on. and trying to seek that at the lowest level. And if they continue to have any concerns, I know each one of the school board members is assigned different schools and different sections. If I don't happen to be the school board member assigned to that, I would encourage them maybe to reach out to either the superintendent or to their school board representative, just to follow up on it. But to really kind of start with that lower level, I kind of think about that from my military services in terms of like a chain of command. You know, who are the first people that are right there? They're probably the best people to be able to address these things effectively. And if there's any other concerns going on there, kind of working our way up as appropriate.
Okay, tell us about a time when you were on a high functioning team and how you contributed to their success as a member on this team.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I'm currently a member of a pretty high functioning team. You know, our PTSD clinical team here in Colorado Springs, we have a pretty good reputation, I think. And how I really contribute to the success of that team is I try to be the best clinical psychologist I can be. I try to focus on what are the things that are effective for my job and what are the skill set that's necessary for that, and how do I continue to develop those things. So of course, in my current field, it's thinking about what are different types of trauma, what can lead to the development of PTSD, what maintains it, how we recover from it, but then also how to communicate that to members that are also kind of affiliated or multidisciplinary kind of team members. We also work with psychiatrists, for example, people that are pharmacists, doctor of pharmacy who actually prescribe. Also primary care physicians and others who are not experts in PTSD. You know, they have their other skill sets that part of their daily focus. And so part of what I help to be successful in that team is be able to communicate those things that are important for, you know, good referrals, what are kind of different factors that are associated with it, additional recommendations. And then we also do things on our team too, like journal clubs. So we kind of stay abreast of kind of current trends in the field. So those are some of the ways I do that.
Okay. What would you do as a board member if the whole board votes and makes a decision that you fundamentally disagree with? Describe what your follow-up actions would entail.
Yeah. I can foresee that kind of being a potential. I mean, anytime you work on a team, there's going to be people who have different opinions, different viewpoints. And I think in a board, you try to state your case as best you can and try to influence people to your perspective. And it doesn't go that way. I think you accept that as kind of reality and try to support the team members in that decision. I think about the next steps. Probably comes along kind of thinking about what are the kind of priorities, because there are many things that are the responsibilities of a school board. And if we get really kind of tied up and hung up on one element of something that the board has already kind of made a decision about is moving on, it can be kind of detracting from what we're actually here for. So in that regard, I think about how important is that maybe at a later date, it might be important to bring up again if it's really fundamental to me, but then again, supporting the decision of the board.
What is your view of policy IJL 1, 2, R, and E regarding library books? What would you seek to change or keep the same?
Yeah. I took a look at these policies. They look pretty reasonable for the most part. I think one of the potential concerns I have is there's maybe a lack of kind of parents or other stakeholders outside the school kind of giving input into some of that process. So if I think about one change, it might be kind of having a little bit more at the initial level, deciding what kind of books are included in libraries. I know it's kind of by the principal or designee, people in library services, things like that, which I don't generally kind of see an overall problem with, other than it probably benefit from some community involvement, especially these days where there's been a lot of concerns by parents, and that's kind of obviously driven kind of, you know, a lot of news across the country. So I think that'd be one way to kind of improve that a little bit, is having, you know, some kind of parent feedback on that or some mechanism for it other than just the kind of repealing process. One of the other ones, I think it was, I think on the criteria, I think number 8 in the policy, I think it said that the overall value of the literary content could outweigh any concerns there might be of offense. I think that might be a little too strict in terms of we might just be able to change, make a minor change, like say it may outweigh any kind of risk of offense. Because one of the things I do in my work a lot of times is I think about what is a crazy outlier, kind of another example. But with that being so strict in its kind of language, there could be an example where someone wants to pick something that's really atrocious in their principal and don't have outside feedback members, and they say, well, the value of it just kind of outweighs any other concern. I don't think that's likely to happen, but I think kind of having just a slight change in language, say it may outweigh it, and that kind of gives room for, more direct concerns.
We are on question number 7. We're right out. We're doing great. What is your understanding of our policy related to clubs in schools? What would you desire to change or keep the same?
Yeah, so my understanding generally about the kind of club policy is that if there's a curriculum-based kind of content or club that's associated with the curriculum, it can be held during school hours, of course, with a teacher or support member that's kind of associated with it, and things that are not curriculum-based are to be held kind of after school hours. I think overall it sounds pretty general, are pretty reasonable. I think about these things sometimes I probably spend a little bit too much time around kind of universities. But one of the things we have at a lot of universities is having like a centralized kind of messaging board where we kind of put up all the things that are advertised for these different clubs and activities. I know there's probably gonna be a reasonable kind of a little bit more restriction on some of the content to some of those groups in elementary schools or K through 12 versus universities. But I think for the most part, it sounds pretty reasonable the way it's set up. So I wouldn't really kind of look at changing a whole lot from the way it is.
Okay, Academy 20 continues to review and improve overall security in our schools. What are some of your ideas related to school security and how we could strengthen or improve security in our schools?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I know it's a concern that I have, and like many other parents, not just here, but kind of across the country. I think we have pretty good security going on in a lot of our schools. I think we have people within from K through 12 who are armed security or actual security guards in these kind of settings. So I think that's outstanding. Some of the things we might be able to do is I can't remember the last time I was at a school where I'd seen something like armed security kind of posted on the outside. And so sometimes I think just communicating that that we have armed security might be effective at deterring. One of the things we unfortunately see across the country, a lot of places where they have some of these horrendous attacks, is that they're kind of identified as soft targets, and because of that, some people that are more likely to engage in these kinds of attacks might be able to see a sign like that and know that this is not such a soft target and be able to kind of deter some, that I would hope. Other than that, I think a lot of things we've also seen is a lot of mental health kind of problems that have been associated with a lot of these attacks and the safety in the schools. I think having good anti-bullying policies, and as well as kind of a good way to be able to try to identify and to assist with someone who might be having some mental health concerns that might be prognostic of some kind of attack or violence. I think we've all seen too many cases where there's kind of warning signs of some of these things before the attacks happened, and kind of inadequate response. It's a difficult job. I used to be on the disruptive behavior committee within the VA, where we kind of do a lot of kind of behavioral assessments for different types of violence. So it's a pretty comprehensive kind of evaluation plan for those things. We're not going to be able to do that in all circumstances, but I think just having ways to try to identify who might be at risk, how do we get them linked up with appropriate services? Those are some of the ideas I would have about that.
All right, thanks, Mr. Waldrop. Student achievement is a priority for D20. What is your understanding of student achievement in D20? And how would you support our district to increase student achievement and growth?
Yeah, well, I mean, D20 is honor with distinction, so I think that's outstanding. I think there's opportunities to continue to build on where that is. And thinking about kind of even considering this kind of school board, I decided to do what academics do, is read some books about these things. And there's been a couple of great books about this kind of Results 2.0, Better on Their Behalf, has some great ideas about these things. And one of the things I was really kind of surprised to learn through some of that reading is that there's, I think, a lot of times opportunity for more evidence-based kind of curriculum and focus in some of these places. And anywhere that I think that might be able to come into play here in D20, it might be a great way to start to think about how we might build on the success we already have. I really tend to think in a very nerdy way about evidence-based outcomes. A lot of that kind of research even comes from schools, thinking about, cross-sectional studies, longitudinal studies, kind of staggered studies, and trying to see what kind of things we can build on within there. We do see a little bit of a lower kind of performance in some of our, K through 3 and also middle school kind of years. There's still some debate out there about how much that is impacted by COVID, but I think those are great opportunities to try to identify what might be kind of driving that and how we continue to improve it. But that's where I really think about those evidence-based outcomes.
D20 is a policy governance district. What is your understanding of policy governance and the importance of the board ends? What role would you as a Board of Education member take in accomplishing these ends?
Yeah, I think for policy governance, my understanding when I was kind of reading through the district, there's basically 10 different principles with 3 different content areas kind of associated with that. And I think the real kind of goal of that is just like we're talking about earlier about the relationship between the superintendent and the board, is thinking about how do we kind of have goals and objectives that are reachable and attainable in reasonable ways. And as a board member, I think that's one of the things we really try to do is try to set up those kind of achievable outcomes, and then trying to, support the superintendent and how she, achieves these, kind of give her that latitude to be able to manage the organization, the day-to-day things, the teachers, things are important, and just kind of think about, are these things objective? Are these things, achievable in some way, and are they meaningful?
Ready? Okay, we're on number 11, Mr. Waldrop. The global end statement identifies knowledge, skills, and character as priorities across the district. How will you support the district's continued work with character education?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually think that was discussed recently in one of the board meetings here about how we kind of work on those things. And I think the knowledge and the skills, I think there are some great evidence-based ways to kind of focus on those things in terms of what are some of the things that are shown to be effective in imparting knowledge to students, and some of those things like direct teaching methods, things along these lines, which are part of those evidence-based curriculums. And then I think kind of maintaining fidelity to those things have been really important. The skills I think about quite a bit in terms of one of the things I hear a lot, and I've kind of witnessed myself when I was teaching at UCCS, a lot of our younger people having a real difficult time with writing. So I'm not sure exactly what's kind of driving that in some ways, but I know one of the effective things that's been shown is by having kids kind of have knowledge imparted to them, testing them on that knowledge, and then having articulated it in some way. So I think one of the ways to continue to build on those skills is be having more written assignments, nothing that's too crazy. My graduate students, I'd hit them with like 25-page papers, nothing like that, but just reasonable things, how you kind of write these things, how you wrap your head around it a different way and communicate it. And then character, I've been thinking about that one quite a bit because we're kind of looking at something that's kind of subjective. And so then we're thinking about how do we have some kind of objective criterion to kind of assess something that's subjective in nature. And I think some things that we could do from that is shifting away from kind of word attachments to what that looks like in terms of character, and start looking at more objective measures such as truancy rates, disciplinary problems. Also looking at kind of grades, how many students are kind of looking at kind of taking AP courses or really challenging themselves, and then how they're performing those different ways. So I think there's different ways to look at more kind of objective criteria for what we think about in terms of character. The military has a lot of different kind of acronyms they use in different forces for these things. The Army has leadership, very many of the same kind of character things: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, courage, integrity, things like this. But we all, and everyone in the military is kind of held accountable to those things. And I look at the list that we have for kind of character, and there's so many there. That would be a task by itself to try and get students to memorize those things. So I think it might be a way to synthesize those and try and hold some of our students kind of like as a challenge, like who can remember these things, who can articulate these things, way for them to kind of sink in a little bit. So I think there's those multiple different ways to try to think about that.
Thank you. How will you work to build trust and confidence among all stakeholders in Academy District 20? Give an example of how you have created this type of culture in another setting.
Yeah. Well, trust is incredibly important, and I think that's, again, one of the things we've seen as a challenge across the country in the last few years, where there's been, I think, a concern about too much influence about kind of different political ideologies or things like that being infused in our schools. And I think a really good pathway out of that is with transparency, trying to let the stakeholders know what's actually happening in our schools, and not feel like we're trying to hold a blanket over some of these things so they can't see what's kind of going on. And I also think, again, back to my nerdy sense of kind of evidence-based outcomes, I think it's as much as we try to be objective in the way we communicate and the things that we're doing, I think that's how you start to build trust. Something I do a lot in my work, obviously, as a therapist, is a lot of trust kind of concerns people have for many different reasons. And if there's any kind of inkling that something is disingenuous, you lose trust kind of right off the bat. So I think things like transparency, trying to be objective as we can, communicating as best we can, are how we start to rebuild those things.
Thank you.
What role do charter schools play within the public school system? What would your stance be as a Board of Education member regarding support of charter schools?
Yeah, I support charter schools. I think they're great opportunities. I think they can be a supplement or even a complement to the to district and for public school settings. They are definitely part of the district, and how we kind of have an association with those and relationship with those is very important. And I think they're also great opportunities to build kind of innovation and competition. And I think that there's a lot of benefits coming from those things. We could have a charter school that has a certain emphasis or a different teaching method, and if they're performing well, they can give kind of lessons learned to our other schools that we might be able to take from those things. We've also seen great evidence from a lot of charter schools across the country, even in some of the more challenging districts. And so I think there's a lot of great lessons to be learned from them. Be holding the same kind of oversight that you would other kind of public schools in a reasonable way, but I think they offer a great opportunity.
Give an example of how you have built strong community partnerships in your past and the actions you would take as a board member to connect with community partners in District 20.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I really did quite a bit when I first kind of moved back out here to Colorado Springs back in 2019 was to work on developing kind of internship and practicum student opportunities with the VA for our local universities. UCCS, for example, has a great psychology program. They also have a trauma track, which is more specific to my area of specialty. But kind of working with our different people within not only the VA but also the local universities and hospitals to try and make it incentivize an attractive place for practicum students to come and get their learning opportunities. And so I think that's a great experience. And then for me, I think in terms of being on a school board, which would be a little bit different, some of my specific kind of work-related things, I was trying to really being open to meeting with stakeholders and people that have any concerns. I know I had great opportunities when I first started being involved with the school boards, meeting with Tom Gregory, as well as kind of Heather Coninger, other people when I wanted to sit down and have a discussion and be able to reach out and have those meetings. And I would do the same thing as a board member, try to make myself available and as reasonably as possible to be able to meet with people, hear their concerns or their ideas.
Okay, Mr. Waldrop. Lastly, is there anything else that you would like to share with us that we did not ask? And do you have questions for us?
Well, I guess one other thing I would share with you is just that I think District 20 is a great district. That's actually what attracted me here in the first place. When we were looking at moving back to Colorado Springs, we were thinking about, well, what's a good district to kind of move into? What should we look for? Where we want our daughter to be kind of educated and to be successful. And that's what kind of brought us to District 20. So I'm just happy to be a community member here, and I'm hoping to be able to continue to serve in that regard. As far as a question I would have is, what would it look like if to be selected, for example, to be a board member? What's the onboarding process to try to get me or whoever is selected up to speed, so we can be successful and not kind of feel like a kind of a third wheel and holding things back, but wanted to try to be here. What we're here for is the success of the students.
Yeah, I'll answer, then anyone else can join in. That's a great question, and we have great plans for doing that, getting you familiar with the board policies and making sure you understand those. Also, I think it's important to understand the tempo and the calendar of how we do things, agenda setting, consent, discussion, how that all works as well as just getting you really familiar with Superintendent Haber and starting to build that relationship to be successful. Does anyone have anything they want to add? Superintendent Haber, you want to add something?
Yeah, so we already have time blocked out on the calendar the first week in June to be able to bring in, or actually the week after whoever is officially sworn in, to meet with the various cabinet members so that the new board member can say, well, tell me about the finance. How does that work? And just at least give that person, an overview of all the different departments, human resources, finance, learning services. And then we also have CASB, which is the Colorado Association for School Boards. We're a member of CASB, and they offer a lot of wonderful resources. They even have kind of like a boot camp for new board members. So whoever that new board member will be, will make sure that you get that person, whether it's you or somebody else, gets connected and kind of know where those resources are as well, and what some of those opportunities would be for the new member to take advantage of. We'll also give the new member a tour of like our transportation department. School will be out, so we wouldn't have an opportunity to necessarily go in and see kids, but and really just see what that person's interest is. And then that would be my job to ensure that we follow up on whatever that person really feels like they need on top of the things that are, specific to the board, but maybe more about the district itself.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Weldrip, for your time. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you much.
All right, so we are ahead of schedule. Do not see Mrs. Chukas here yet. So we will plan to resume at 5:30 unless she gets here and is ready to go. Mrs. Chukas, we can start anytime you're ready, or we can wait till right at 5:30. It's totally up to you. Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much for being here tonight. We're just going to go around in a circle, take turns asking questions. We'll start with Director Cons and then go to Director Yanez, then Director Wilburn, and then myself, and around we go.
Okay.
All right, so with that, Director Cons.
Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Chukas. First question, why are you interested in being a D20 board member? What experiences do you have that would make you the best candidate for a board member position?
Sure. Well, I realize that I have a unique set of experiences and professional skills that have relevance for contributing immediately as a board member during the next 6 months. My attendance at board meetings is reliable and it's well documented in the minutes. I'm already contributing to the discussion of the board's agenda, and I bet a few times you probably wanted to engage me in a discussion or seek out clarification from me, but the format doesn't allow for that. And so appointing me to the board allows for that dialogue to actually happen. My experiences over the past 15 years in the Colorado Springs education community are outlined in my application. It's just hard to believe it's 15 years. But probably, and that's probably easily interpreted from the application. But I wanted to decipher a little bit more about my professional experience. I've spent my professional career as a private sector business strategist. I help teams make hard choices. And I do customized and focused research for the world's largest private organizations to allow them to make billion-dollar decisions, where to grow, where to cut back, where to invest in, what actions to take and what actions to ignore. And I help executives discreetly collect a wide and rich source of perspectives from people to make data-driven decisions. At my heart, I'm a listener. I'm an observer. You probably don't see that in this boardroom, but that's really what I do in a professional settings. And you know, I have lots of stories to tell about that, but guess what? I don't tell those stories. I adhere to a set of professional ethics and I have integrity. I follow process. And this private sector professionalism is what I would bring to the board and allow it to continue to be successful over the next 6 months. And I'm happy to take actions in this short term to ensure success beyond that with a new board composition in December.
Okay. How would you describe the ideal relationship between the board and the superintendent?
Well, I believe that there should be open communications with the entirety of the board and the superintendent. When we're in this room for board meetings and study sessions, we need clear auditory communication to make sure that it's understood by everybody. And I'm not sure where communication right now, and open communication is less than ideal. But I work with hundreds of organizations and they have different ways of communicating both in person and digitally. And I've seen a lot of different patterns and permissible forms of digital communications. And I'm happy, based upon what this board wants to improve upon in June, to suggest other ways that open communications with the entirety of the board and the superintendent can occur.
Thank you, Ms. Chukas, for being here. And you're right, you do put in a lot of time in this district. We all recognize that. And the fact that you're here tonight, continuing that pattern is frankly no surprise. Question number 3 is a hypothetical, a scenario. A parent sees you in a grocery store, tells you that about an incident where their child was being bullied at school, what would your reactions or response be?
Well, obviously, this person has the interest in feeling like they can confide in me for some reason about something that's very sensitive to them and their child. I guess, you know, given that this board is really a policy governance board, I don't have a role in overseeing or investigating what that is all about. However, I would want to inquire to understand is, you know, what does this parent need right now? Do they need an advocate to be with them, another adult to be with them, to understand the site-based process that goes on with that? Are they curious about sort of what age-appropriate information that goes on in terms of justice and reconciliation that goes on with bullying at their site in some way? But ultimately, it's about sort of referring them and making sure they're comfortable with their site-based process, because that would be the first place to go. And then if their advocate doesn't really have the ability to help them understand that process beyond that, I'm happy to inquire with the district about sort of what it would be after that and point them to those resources.
Okay, thank you. Tell us about a time when you were on a high functioning team and how you contributed to their success as a member on this team.
Well, so I will say I always work in a team setting. Again, since I've left academia, I'm never somebody who does something on my own, right? This is not about me at all. This is about a we and what we can achieve. If I go back to sort of 1999, if you all think about what you were doing in 1999 and what was available to you, this is the time of the .com sort of like in period there. And I moved back from Washington, D.C. back to Boston to be part of a core team face-to-face focused on building a .com. You know, we were really a startup there. But again, I'm not a software developer. I am not a web designer. I am not a software salesperson to enterprises. The skill set I brought to this team was that I'm a statistician. And ultimately, what our product and our service was really about was about meeting the needs for statisticians and people who would like to be statisticians. Translate that to the world of today of data interpretation or data science, right? Again, but this is 25 years ago. So again, what I did was I stepped into a product management role, and I understood the constraints of my teammates with their specialized skills and was empathetic to that. We negotiated together to reach a product that could ship. We came up with a way to document a process, and I spent a lot of time with process and help documentation to bring it to requirements, to bring this to software, to bring it to reality. I understood the customer needs and could contribute in that way as well. And I poured a lot of time and effort into this, contributing in the ways that I could. Team members valued my role. They valued the ability for me to step up in a variety of ways. And, you know, and I'm proud to say that, you know, it's interesting in the software space that this product endures 25 years later. I was meeting with a client 6 months ago or something like that, and they saw the name of the product and they're like, wait, we still use this. We love this. And again, who would say that about a .com from 25 years ago? Nobody's using that sock puppet website anymore to buy pet food. So anyway, I'm proud of that and the role that I played there.
Thank you. Next question. What would you do as a board member if the whole board votes and makes a decision that you fundamentally disagree with? Describe what your follow-up actions would entail.
Well, so again, once a decision is reached, I believe the board speaks with one voice to ensure clarity and consistency for the superintendent. And so again, this is all very hypothetical, and so I'm not even going to bring an example, but I think that any follow-up action would be to work to find conditions, if necessary, for the decision to be revisited on a future agenda item. Again, if that's necessary, but not just to revisit it for that sake, but to actually understand what additional context, what additional data would be needed the next time the decision could be revisited.
What is your view of policy IJL 1, 2, R, and E regarding library books? What would you seek to change or keep the same?
So again, we got these questions like 2 hours ago, right? And so again, I was really focused on board policy rather than administrative policy. So I went and I looked at it sometime in the past 2 hours. But again, my view when I look at these policies is that there was a lot of work done by a lot of professionals in 2023 and 2024 to refresh these policies. And I don't believe it's a priority in the next 6 months to revisit them. Ultimately, this is about parents having a choice about how their, or guardians, about how their student uses the library. And ultimately that parent choice is reflected in that. And if that's not understood by parents, then that needs to be communicated better to parents. If that's not understood by that community, by our community, property owners in this district and this side of the county, and it needs to be communicated better to them.
Okay, we're moving right along. Number 7. What is your understanding of our policy related to clubs in schools, and what would you desire to change or keep the same?
Sure. And so when I hear the word clubs, I think about a few different things given my experiences in different buildings in the district as a parent. I think about athletics, activities, and on-site gatherings. And I think that's what, and by that I mean things that are not for academic credit. So like DECA in the high school, that's for academic credit. That's not a club. Orchestra in the middle school, that's for academic credit during their exploratory periods. That's not a club. Okay, so then we're talking about athletic, and I don't think we're talking about building rental, which again is about for-profit service providers like Lego Battle Robots building things in the elementary school, and that's for-profit service providers renting space in our schools and marketing to our students. So I don't think you're talking about for the building rental policy. So, but again, that's, I think equity has been put into that in terms of the funding sources, but again, I don't think you're talking about building rental by for-profit service providers. So then I think you're talking, when you say clubs, it's about athletics, activities, and on-site gatherings that are not for academic credit. And I think about these as being the unified sports, the intramural sports, the interscholastic athletics, activities, and on-site gatherings. And these are amazing opportunities for students to gather together on their own interests. They opt into these. It fits strongly with the strategic plan of connectedness. It is allowing for leadership opportunities for our students. And I think it also surfaces gaps and needs where formalized academic programs and innovations can happen. That's happening in esports. That's again, that might have been some sort of club before, and now it's actually a CHSAA designated thing. About the digital media experiences that we have at Air Academy, about aviation and interest in aviation, right? So this helps us to surface formalized programs. I think faculty supervision is important if it's during school hours. And again, I think that's what we're talking about by these types of clubs. And I think that there's a policy about placement process. If sites don't have programs, that all makes sense to me. I found that in board docs, so that makes sense to me. I think if I had one comment, and this is based upon a site conversation we had in this winter about things to change, it's really about fees for these types of clubs to really reflect the reality. And right now there is a schedule of fees or a price list for many different clubs and activities at the K through 12 level. And in our conversation at our high school, we don't think it really reflects reality. And we think that we talked about it and came up with solutions for our site, but there needs to be better communication about additional funding requests that are beyond that price list, the district provided price list. We talked, in our school, we talked about how to resolve this between the booster clubs, the parents, the club leaders, and it's all about communication and transparency. An example of this might be marching band and the fees actually required for marching band, okay? And that if you think about the successful marching band programs, what is required by a musician or somebody who's part of Color Guard is well beyond what that published fee is. If we think about football and the Durango travel that our cadets have to do this fall, that is well beyond what that scheduled fee is for this year. And again, so that creates surprises. And again, it has to do with challenges for fundraising needs within specific activities and clubs. And I think there just needs to be better communication and transparency.
Okay, Academy District 20 continues to review and improve overall security in our schools. What are some of your ideas related to school security and how we could strengthen or improve security in our schools?
Yeah, sure. Again, I know because I've been in this district for a number of years, and as many of you know, I chose to be part of this district the week of the Sandy Hook shooting. So again, security of young people has always been important for me in terms of the choices that I made long ago. I think we've invested a lot in physical plant infrastructure. We think about our prior bond and what it kind of changed. That's been very helpful. I think that what we've heard in presentations, whether it's been here in the boardroom or at community groups like Parent Sounding Board, the security presentations in 2024 and 2025. They show the outstanding job that our staff security team is doing. The SRO model, I believe, is super helpful about building relationships and building visibility about with our staff and our students, and perhaps with our parents about security and safety. And that needs to be continued, and those positions need to be filled. If I think about improvements, what's really interesting about our district is that we actually have 3 different external public safety organizations that we have to coordinate with. On the Air Force Academy, we have security forces, right? Students all know all about security forces up there. We also have the CSPD, and we have the Sheriff's Office. And if there was anything that I would suggest improving, and this is really based upon my participation in groups about understanding county resources. There's a great program I encourage everyone to be part of called Citizen College in the fall, and really to understand our sheriff. And our sheriff staffing model is such that the head count of about the number of people who are in the sheriff's office is that the vast majority of them are working in the county jail. And so there aren't a lot of patrols for sheriff's officers. There are not a lot of cars driving around. And there aren't a lot of patrols on the northwest side of the county where our school sites are. I'm thinking about Sun Hills. I'm thinking about Black Forest. And so I would do anything I can encourage for a better head count in the sheriff's department to ensure that there's better patrols on the northwest side of the county and into Black Forest. That's something that I would say that would need to happen. But really, that's about sort of the what if, the hypothetical, and when we need emergency responders with us. The more frequent things when I think about school security and school safety is about how we keep people safe from the other beings that are around them. And that's really about traffic and traffic patrol, and also about wild animals. And again, you've heard more than you probably ever wanted to know about safety and wild animals from me, but that is an important thing on my side of town, and probably also in the Black Forest, about how we keep our children safe from wild animals, and also, when people bring their pets to the school site. But traffic's also important. I remember having a great conversation with the leader of the CAPS program, which is about the community-oriented patrols, and I'm like, why aren't you guys up on Old Ranch Road and Powers? You're able to be out there doing volunteer work for a lot of different sites when there's a lot of ingress and egress of different sites, different parking lots around the city. Why aren't they up there by Pine Creek? Again, those are things to think about. And again, they're open to those conversations, and that's what we should really be thinking about, is better education and enforcement of traffic, and also about animals.
Thank you. Student achievement is a priority for D20. What is your understanding of student achievement in D20, and how would you support our district to increase student achievement and growth?
Yeah, so the word student achievement, I think how we define it in the district is academic excellence. And it's a part of our strategic plan, and it's very clear sort of what's being measured in terms of success with academic excellence at our district. This is about college and career readiness. This is about English language arts, and this is about math competencies, and it's about our special education population. I'm not going to talk about college and career readiness, but on those other 3, this is, when we hear about that, we have a lot of success success already. We have so many people meeting the benchmarks. We have so many close to meeting those benchmarks. And then we have some people who are further away from them. But we ultimately know when we talk to the professionals who are responsible for ensuring students do this, it's about hands-on interactions, right? This is about building relationships with those students and understanding the barriers that they have to not making that benchmark for English language arts, math, or with the special education population. And again, there's only certain places that we're falling behind what we've defined, right? So we need to make sure that we've got enough financial resources for those hands-on interactions, as well as we need to, if people don't believe that we've got a lot of great student achievement or academic excellence, we need to communicate more about that greatness. And so those are two things I would say. But really, for hands-on interaction, this is about ensuring there's enough funding. And that's something that I feel very strongly about. And when I think about the places and the sources of funding for this district, you know, there's three different levels. You know, one is the federal level, and that's full of a lot of uncertainty, right? And over the next couple of years, we don't know what the federal government is going to think about for Title I funds and IDEA funds. We don't even know what it's going to do for DoD affiliated families and what's going to happen with that impact funds, right? So that really, for the most part, that's going to affect our special education function. So we need to think about where we can get those funds from elsewhere. If I think about the next 6 months, the state is not going to do anything to change that. Again, the budget, the School Finance Act is locked. That's a January thing when the session's back. And we really only have little things we can advocate for tweaks. We can advocate for tweaks for next year. But again, we're never going to be advantaged at the state level. We're not a rural school. We do not have a lot of English language learners. We don't have a lot of at-risk students in terms of free and reduced lunch. And so we just have our special education population. So we need to make sure that we're focused on them as well. And so if we can't really get anything, so all we can do to help us with state level funding is just ensure that everyone, in terms of communication and an ease of process, that we have as many kids here on October 1st headcount day as we can. Right, we need to be talking about the greatness of this district. We need to be talking about how we're going to be supporting special education students. We need to be talking about that it's easy if you just show up and sign a lease on August 1st that we've got a place for you in your neighborhood school. And you know, those are the things that we can do to get our share of state funding, but we can't affect the formula. The other thing we can do at a financial level to make sure we're improving these hands-on interactions is really at the local level. Communities can fund their own public education. Communities do this in the state of Colorado. If we think about Cheyenne Mountain, if we think about what they do with things like mill levy overrides, they're 160% higher at a peer pupil level than we are. If we think about Boulder Valley, who probably cares a lot about education given the university population, they're 200% higher than we are at a per pupil level in an MLO. And so my belief is that we're not using the financial instrument that the state of Colorado makes available to us to locally fund our own public education. And we need to have a lot of conversations about that. We need to educate the people who are property owners in this district to understand that. Property owners are not the same as voters, right? We know this as well. So many of our military families do not choose to register to vote in Colorado. But we need to educate our property owners about community funds can fund their own public education. If I think about 2 months ago at Parent Sounding Board, we had a wonderful conversation, a lot of creativity about other ways to think about local communities funding their own public education, taking advantage of those funds. There was a lot of creativity about that. There are places in this state that use sales tax to fund public education. And why couldn't we be thinking about that for our 5 districts in the city? Why couldn't we be thinking about that for the 17 districts in this county? There are communities, mainly resort communities, because they have a lot of tourists coming through, who use their LART dollars to fund public education and support public education. We are a resort community. We're not the same as Steamboat Springs, but we are a resort community, and we need to be thinking about that as well. Local funds for local public education. And ultimately, again, that's the thing that we need to think about. And I think those are the ways that we can think about increasing hands-on interactions to make sure that we're achieving student achievement.
D20 is a policy governance district. What is your understanding of policy governance and the importance of the board ends? What role would you as a Board of Education member take in accomplishing these ends?
Well, so again, it's a policy governance district, right? So my goal as a board member is to make sure the superintendent and everyone that is sort of part of that organization, that they're working on these ends, right? And so that it's very clear, and that they're clearly communicating how we're doing in terms of the knowledge and skills and the character, and that's ultimately what we need to do, is sort of hold the superintendent accountable about that. I think that there used to be, and again, I get confused now with the changes in board policy. I think there used to be a regular cadence to doing this, and I don't know if it needs to, and then it changed to sort of, we'll do it on an ad hoc basis. And I just don't know sort of what's coming up over the next 6 months to make sure that the superintendent is communicating on these board ends to us. Again, like sometimes they're talked about at an earlier point in time. But I do know that, really over the next 6 months, we're going to get a great report on the student experience study, and it's going to give us a great understanding from people who are parents and people who are students, and I think staff as well, about sort of how we're doing on the character measures, as well as how we're doing on the Portrait of a Graduate measures. And we're going to kind of understand some aspects of that. And, I don't know if in the next 6 months that we would understand if there are any gaps or any action items the superintendent sees in those character aspects. So.
The Global End Statement identifies knowledge, skills, and character as priorities across the district. How will you support the district's continued work with character education?
Yeah, I think we've, in the district, we've come up with the notion of encouraging a vision for success of our students through the Portrait of a Graduate. And I would encourage the Portrait of a Graduate work. Again, it was sort of defined, and it's being rolled out about what it is and what it means at different levels of students' ability to understand it. And I think that just needs to continue to roll that out to all the relevant populations. For example, I don't know what Portrait of a Graduate means to the preschool population. Again, for the kids lucky enough to go to preschool here in D20, I don't know if we're going to get down to that level of communicating that to those parents or to those students. But, again, that's part of that rollout, right? Right now, we're focused on the high school students and the high school staff. So I also add to that is there was an interesting conversation in this boardroom. It started, and then again, it was as an auditory person who doesn't get a transcript of the board meeting, it wasn't clear sort of where it ended. But there was this desire, again, we're getting data from the student experience study about Portrait of Graduate dimensions as well as character measures. We're getting both of those right now in this next this 2025 measure of this. It's going to be interesting to see if that is going to be helpful for that cross mapping that's desired in some way of sort of character measures and Portrait of a Graduate measures. I do think, again, when we the Portrait of a Graduate work is an amazing depth of thought and collaboration from across the community about sort of what it's going to take for somebody to be successful in 2030, right, as they transition out of the district, right? This is about the future. It's future oriented. And I do think that perhaps one thing that could be achievable in the next 6 months, after we're getting this data from the student experience study, after we've done that cross mapping of the Portrait of a Graduate and these character measures, is really to revisit the character ends that are part of the board or part of those ends in the board policy, because the last time they were revisited was 2012. And so again, if we sort of think about what we're actually doing to prepare people for the future, to prepare them to transition to the next stage, it may well be that one thing this board could really, this board in the next 6 months could really help with is defining a better set of ends that are really related to Portrait of a Graduate.
All right, thank you. How will you work to build trust and confidence among all stakeholders in Academy District 20? Give an example of how you have created this type of culture in another setting.
So there are a lot of stakeholders in Academy District 20. It's an awful lot, right? There's our funders who are property owners, right? And I don't even know how many of those there are. There's probably 60,000 of them, right? There are people, and so they are somebody who is part of our stakeholders. We've got voters. We've got 95,000 voters. We've got 26,000 students, which probably means 40,000 parents, and not all of them even live in this district. We've got staff who don't live in our district, right? So there's a lot of different groups of people. So have I ever tried to build trust and confidence at the level of a 200,000 person organization? I haven't, but I have for a 100,000 person organization, right? And this was about sort of a rebranding exercise that I did with them, and really sort of working through sort of what their brand for the future was going to be about. And it ultimately was about sort of having everybody internalize what that brand meant to them, what that brand meant to their function and division in their part of the world. And so again, that's about communication, and that's about not just communication out of one way, but dialogue both ways, right? And so the idea here is, if you're trying to change culture in some way, like, again, it has to be about two-way communication. And you know, it's not just about me, it's about we, it's about a whole group of people, and sort of thinking about that. So I build trust and confidence in the small groups of people that I work with, the teams that I work with, by showing up, by doing the work. And so again, if that's what your question is, that's totally fine. But again, 200,000 people, that ain't my gift, right? But you know, thinking through what it could do to sort of change around 100,000 employees at one of the most successful companies in the world, I've thought about that before.
Thank you. What role do charter schools play within the public school system? What would your stance be as a Board of Education member regarding support of charter schools?
Charter schools charter schools in Colorado get their funding from the D20 district based upon their per pupil count on October 1st. And so I would just want to make sure to ensure that they have the funds that they're promised. And again, I would say that I would want to ensure that if any applications came up in the next 6 months, that the DAC has adequate time and briefing to adequately review applications. I don't think the DAC's reviewed applications in a long time, but again, like, just to make sure that they've got the time and space and resources so that they can do that.
Give an example of how you have built strong community partnerships in your past and the actions you would take as a board member to connect with community partners in District 20.
Okay. So building community partners. Okay, so when I started speaking at board meetings 5 years ago, I was not confident that the discussion or commentary understood the impact of decisions on our amazing set of West Side educators, on our aging school sites, or on the children or adults in our community. And so I spoke up, right? So that was something that was important for me to do. And, you know, as part of that, you know, it also led to me being involved with different community groups in a way that I hadn't before. So I had been on a SAC at the elementary school at Woodman Roberts, but with site-based management, I find school accountability committees, SACs, to be amazing. And being part of and now co-leading the SAC for Air Academy High School really crystallized for me the unique needs of its facility. And to me, it was important to elevate the need for facility funds that a site-based budget cannot accommodate. It's not just a few $1,000s that were required to keep that facility up there, but it was a few $1 million that were needed. And I'm really proud of the conversations that we initiated back in 2022 and 2023 amongst engaged alumni, parents, and staff. We were doing this a long time ago, and I was really proud of, again, not just those conversations happening then, but those then connecting to the group of committed parents from across the district that came together in June and July of 2024 to get ultimately what was called 4B passed. It did that, you know, for Air Academy High School, and also for other schools to address their physical facility deficiencies. But this required building partnerships across the feeder strand, across the school parents that, that I had interacted with only a little bit, and really to get them involved and get who else they think is going to be involved. It required us to have conversations and professional conversations in the broader business community for them to support Academy District 20 and the goals that were going to be required to change around what the facility site was allowed to be by the PSMIP grant. So that, that was something that was also going on there. And it required conversations into our neighborhoods, right? Into the neighborhoods in my side of town, and the HOAs. And it required bringing together lots of different people to get that information out there. So I'm really proud of those types of community partnerships. And, again, if I think about what actions would I take as a board member to connect with community partners, well, I'd like to really communicate wider about local school funding and how we can do this local school funding, thinking about different ways to make this happen, whether, again, it's at our district level, if it's at the city level, if it's at the county level, but really sort of being a part of thinking about local school funding, because, again, we're not going to be, our school district of the 179 school districts in the state is not going to be advantaged by any school funding formula. We're just not. Okay, and so we need to think about the sophisticated financial measures that we can take into place so that people understand local school funding. So that's sort of what I would want to be a part of.
Okay, this is the last question, Mrs. Chugas. Is there anything else that you would like to share that we did not ask, and or do you have any questions for us?
I think I have both. Hopefully that's okay. So it's not an or, hopefully it's an and. So again, so first of all, to share with you, again, is our family is finishing up our 12th year in the district this week. My husband and I have been happy to educate our kids in our neighborhood West Side Academy District 20 schools. We've tried to participate in the school community as much as our work commitments would allow, which probably makes me no different than any other current parent or guardian. My application outlines the way I've assisted over the past 12 years. My children's teachers know the way I participate in my children's education. My children's administrators and staff know how they can get me involved in the ways that I'm comfortable participating effectively. I've never had a problem participating in my school, in the schools where my children attended. But my schedule was never going to allow me to make a good DAC representative for any site. That my schedule wasn't going to ever allow for that. But I can reshelve library books with the best of them. Those are the things, these are the different ways that I participate. The reason I get involved at board meetings is because our side of town, which really is about probably 300,000 people, it really has unique needs when it comes to our neighborhood public schools. And this is across District 20 and District 11. It's very blended up there. And that's probably what the four of you on the board know me best for. I'm talking about the safety needs, which are unique for me and my neighbors and our community and at our school sites. So again, I'm a person who day to day, I walk the streets of my neighborhood. I walk my kids to school with a very misbehaving dog. I park at the bus stop and drive a kid home for that last hot and uphill half mile. I sit in kiss and go parking lots. I wait in line at the South Gate, getting access to the academy. I'm there at these school sites. So those are things that, that I think make me kind of unique, and I didn't get a chance to cover in anything else. Again, I was hoping that this could really be a dialogue about a few things. And so I guess my question really is, did you want to hear from me about I outlined what I had as three top priorities on my application about what could be achievable in the next 6 months. I don't know if you have any questions for me about any of those, or did you want to hear any different ideas about what I think could be achievable in the next 6 months? As I've had time to reflect on this, I've got a couple other ideas as well. So that's my question to you.
You have about 5 minutes left, so I think you can share what you would like to in the rest of that 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, so again, as I think about a couple things over the next 6 months, again, obviously in my application, I'm just going to say this quickly for people who didn't have the chance to read the application is, again, I think we just need to continue to make sure that all of our capital projects and what's going on with the 2025 bond issuance in the next few months are communicated well about sort of what we're doing to make those improvements quickly and safely and not interrupt learning. We need to talk about the great academic excellence we have in this district and clear up any misperceptions about that. And then also, again, I'd love to get alignment with fellow board members and the ASD 20 administration on local funding sources to ensure that, over the next 3 to 5 years, we have the funding we need for those hands-on experiences to close the other academic excellence gaps. The other things I think about really are related to a couple other things which I think are fairly achievable in this short time frame. One is Purple Star schools. We need to make sure that we're getting all of the Purple Star applications that are going in completed and get that recognition out there. That's so important for military families who are coming in, and it's so important to have on-site resources as well for those military families. The second thing I can think about again is this is an auditory method of communication in this boardroom, and I was over at the library. I'm over there quite often, and there's a parliamentarian in El Paso County who's willing to provide their services, and it would be great for this board to think about using that parliamentarian to get a couple of our questions answered and how we can be more effective in auditory communications. The implications of that, I really want to make it clear, is if I'm in the back of the room here and I don't hear something, I can't get the recording until Monday. Right? And so I don't know what the decision actually is or the nature of the conversation is until 5 days later. Right? So that's kind of weird. And so it would be better to sort of clearly communicate things auditorily right away, right? So that would be useful there. And so that's something to think about, is whether a parliamentarian could help us with that. I do think that in the fall, as we're going to hear about ballot initiatives coming up, things for voters to vote yes or no about. And I think we need to educate our community about the vulnerabilities related to free breakfast and free lunch. Again, this district stands to lose a lot depending on different ways. I think there's going to be 2 measures, and based upon one of them, this district stands to lose a lot. Again, we're not advantaged in terms of a lot of the formulas that go when there's only limited resources for free breakfast and free lunch. Okay, so to make that really clear, for example, is I think there's going to be a ballot initiative that says, will you fund free school lunch or not? And if people vote no, our district's not going to get any money for free school lunch, right? It's going to go to districts which are rural. It's going to go to districts which have English language learners, which have a larger at-risk population. If there's only a limited amount of funds, then it's not going to come to us. So again, we may need to educate people about the vulnerabilities about that and what it means also, for changes in processes whenever those funds run out, if that's the 2026 school year or if that's January 1st, 2026. So those are a couple things I can think about that are very achievable in the next 6 months that I did not bring up earlier.
Very good. Thank you so very much, Ms. Chukas. Appreciate your time and your input, and have a good rest of your night. We will take a 5-minute break and start at 6:15 as scheduled for Mr. Beckman. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Beckman, for being here. Appreciate your time and energy into all of this. How we've been rolling is we take turns with questions. I'll start to my right with Director Cons, then Yanez, then Wilburn, back to me, and around we go. So with that, we'll start with Director Cons.
All right, welcome. Why are you interested in being a D20 board member? What experiences do you have that would make you the best candidate for a board member position?
First off, board, thank you for the opportunity to interview with you tonight. First off, the reason I would like to be a member of the District 20 Board of Directors is number one, to serve our community. District 20 has been good to me. District 20 has been good to my family. District 20 has been good to my children. And I would like to pay it forward with what I can offer through a unique perspective for District 20. So the number one reason why I'd like to serve on this is to serve our community. I'd like to ensure that all students have access to the world-class education that they move to Academy District 20 to get, and that it opens the doors of opportunity for the best possible outcome for them while they're here in our care. Also, I'd like to continue the tradition of financial responsibility that the district has had as long as it's been around by using district resources well. And then I'd like to assist our parents in raising the leaders of character for tomorrow. As every parent knows, it's a challenging time to raise kids. Certainly none of us go back and wish we would have been raised now. We're glad we were born earlier. But helping the district to raise our children and helping our parents to be raised in this challenging time, I think is something I can offer a different lens through. And to answer the second part, the reason why I think I would be the best candidate for it is the different lenses I can provide to the board. Number one, I'm a current parent. As you can see, I have my 6th grade daughter, my 8th grade son with me, who only know District 20. It's the only school district they've ever attended. And we chose to put up our roots here in District 20 about a year after we moved to Colorado Springs because we wanted the type of schools that District 20 offered for us. Number two, I'm a current teacher. I teach in the classroom every day. I have 20 years of distinguished teaching in the classroom, little different role now than I've had in the past, but I'm able to lend that lens of a teacher that I think I'll be able to bring up in a couple questions that'll come out today. Also, to be able to work with data. I'm a math person. Sometimes my wife jokes that my love language is Excel. I can lend that as the district or as the board of directors has wanted to move more into data-driven decisions, I think I can lend that lens to it. Currently, I work at an institution that's incredibly data-driven. Every single question, every single student, every single outcome is driven by data. In fact, all day today, we're really just talking about the data from our previous school year that we had. And I think I can add that perspective and that lens while being good at explaining the math and not making it too complicated for everybody in the audience, whether that be people attending the board or people who are not in education, to be able to understand what these acronyms in education mean. Second off, or also a track record of our financial responsibility. As you can see from my resume, I've had many opportunities to serve as a treasurer. I've also served on the board of directors of our metropolitan district. I have extreme responsibilities and also experience in reviewing financial reports. In fact, oftentimes my wife would joke with me that there's ink on my hands because I've been going through reports all night on finances. And I'm really good at asking the right questions to help get the lens of like what we can do to optimize outcomes. In addition to that, I have the advantage of having working experience in District 20, having been a teacher in the district for 11 years from the classroom, to I helped out on the mill levy override campaign in 2023, to even speaking with board members here in this room on occasions. And lastly, I'm a speech and debate coach. I've taught many people how to use Robert's Rules of Order for years. I was the state congressional chair. In fact, I was the first chair of congressional debate for the state of Colorado when they brought that event back. So I offer a variety of different lenses that I think other people just don't bring to the table that could help our board meet our board ends.
How would you describe the ideal relationship between the board and the superintendent?
Absolutely. Number one is positive. And research even shows when the superintendent and the board of directors have a positive relationship, it leads to better student outcomes and better academic results. University of Connecticut 2015. So the first thing is a positive relationship, that we're on the same team, we're working together to address the challenges that we're going to face as a district. Because let's be honest, we do have several challenges in District 20. We are one of the lowest funded and sometimes even the lowest funded district in the entire state. So we have to have a positive relationship with our superintendent to address the challenges that we as a district have. Number two, and this one you get for free because it's clearly defined roles. We already have that in board policy that's been refined and revised over years and years and years of clearly defined roles of what is the superintendent's job, what is the superintendent responsible for, and what are we as board members responsible for. So number 2 is clearly defined roles allows both groups to experience success because they know what exactly their expectations are. Number 3 would be a shared vision. Where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? That's crucial that the board and the superintendent have that same vision of where they want the district to go. Number 4, abundant and timely communication that is prioritized, because many times things comes up or there's a change in a budget situation or something happened that morning. A superintendent that has great communication with the board of directors that gives them that timely communication and abundance so they can process and bring their expertise to the table to allow the board to lend their lens on like how should we address this or how should we move forward with this. And then lastly, being honest about the challenges and opportunities that are facing our district. And let's be honest, we have funding challenges. We are sometimes not even given a raise from the state of Colorado equivalent to what PARA is going to ask more from us that year. So being honest about what the challenges are that our district's facing, what the superintendent and the board see so they can have that clear communication and the opportunities that are coming up. Like here are things we see that we can do in the future in District 20. Having that honest and clear communication about both the challenges and the opportunity would be an ideal relationship between the board and the superintendent. So to summarize, a positive relationship, clearly defined roles, a shared vision, abundant and timely communication, and honesty about the challenges and opportunities facing Academy District 20.
You done writing? Oh. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you again, Mr. Beckman, and all of the candidates for putting in the time it took to get yours as far as you are. Question number 3 is a hypothetical. This is a scenario. A parent sees you in a grocery store and tells you about an incident where their child was bullied at school. What would be your response or action?
Well, this isn't a scenario. After 11 years of working in the district and choosing to buy a house in the attendance area of the school that I worked at, King Soopers and parent-teacher conferences were literally the same location for some parents in the district. So I have a lot of experience with this, and my wife can tell you many times what should have been a milk trip and taken 5 minutes was a 45-minute conversation because a couple parents happened to grab me while I was there. The number one thing is expressing the humanity. I'm sorry this is happening to your child. This is not what we expect in Academy District 20. Just because the person's on the board doesn't mean they lose their humanity. They need to do the right and the just thing by that parent and say, I'm sorry that's happening. Because number one, that gives you the credibility for that parent to listen to you, that you understand the situation they're in. So number 2, I'm glad that your child trusted that information with you. Anybody who has children in this age will know that it's hard for kids to tell their parents about their shortcomings. That, every day is supposed to be about what great things happen. The A you got on that test, the goal you scored in hockey, the solo you got in band. And it's hard to come home and talk about those imperfections in a world that's dominated by social media perfection. So I'm really glad that your child had that trust relationship with you, that they were comfortable telling you that. And sometimes parents need to hear that so they hear that there was a positive and a negative. Number 2, though, now we need to talk about what we need to do going forward. Have you set up a meeting to talk to your school administration about the issue? Effective communication in this world right now comes down to relationships. And while it's easy to send a text message, it's easy to get on Safe to Tell, it's easy to send an email, it's far more effective to start that relationship with that administrator that's over your child's school, just so they can hear what's going on and they can start that trust relationship with you. So have you emailed your school's administration? Because not only is that policy, like that's what we do in District 20, that's also just the right thing to do because that's where the solution to this situation is going to happen at. It's not going to happen at a board meeting. It's going to happen at that school. And then one of the cool things you can do is carry around something that has your business card in it that just say, hey, shoot me an email. and follow up with me and let me know what happened. Let me know what the result was, because 99 times out of 100, just that conversation with that building administrator resolves the issue. Because there's something going on that administrator wasn't aware of, or there's an inappropriate relationship that's going on between a student and another student. But 99 times out of 100, it does. And the one time out of 100 it doesn't, you as the board member could then say, well, here is that chain of command. That is the next person that you would need to talk to. But certainly, I have no illusions that joining the Board of Education is going to have me changing student schedules. As soon as it was announced who the finalist was, my phone blew up with messages of, will you get my kid on the hockey team? Is it possible that DCC is finally going to get that hockey team they always wanted? When is the district going to build a hockey rink? I want the pilot program at Rampart, not Air Academy. That are just not roles that the board has in our governance structure. That's delegated to the superintendent, and then the superintendent delegates that to administration of the school. So just letting them know what that chain of command is in District 20, and that you're going to follow up to make sure that that was resolved. That's how I would approach that scenario.
Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Tell us about a time when you were on a high functioning team and how you contributed to their success as a member on this team.
Absolutely. One time I was on a high functioning team as I was working at Discovery Canyon High School. I was in the math department and our data showed us that our freshmen were really struggling in mathematics. And this was in 2019, so this is pre-COVID, just to give you the scenario we were in. Our data showed that our freshmen were coming in well below grade level. So we had to do something about it. So what I'm going to tell you about today is the systematic intervention program that we introduced for freshman math. Number one was we had positive relationships within the team, that we had trust of each other. Mr. Briebach, Mr. DeMeyer, Mr. Chmielewski, Dr. Watkins, Mrs. Skolaski, and Mrs. Bonfield, these were all first-round draft pick teachers. They were people that you would love for your child to be in any of their classes. And when you have that scenario, you already are set up for success because you have people that have both the right training and the right heart. Number two, we needed to clearly define, like, we got this problem, what are we going to do to accomplish it? So clearly define goals of what we wanted to accomplish from this system. Then we defined out who was in charge of what part. Like, we had to write learning targets. What exactly do we want our kids to learn? Because now it wasn't just going to be happening in our classrooms. Our students and our interventions were going to be going back and forth between multiple teachers. So everybody had to be on exactly the same page of, like, what did learning target 4.3 mean? Just like, what does administrative policy 4.3 mean in the district? If we're not on the same page, that's the end of the success for that group. Number four, we researched. We looked at what other schools had done to solve that problem. We also looked at what our data had showed us of things we had done in the past. Number five, we had an admin team that believed in us. So those people above us, which went all the way to Mr. Gregory, who's our superintendent at the time, Dr. Fields, who was over our school, Dr. Bramschreiber, who's our assistant principal over us. But we had an admin team that when we presented the proposal, they said, yeah, go for it, because they believed in what we were trying to do and what we were trying to do for the students of District 20. So that high-performing team was built on all those characteristics that were very intentional and very strategic at every part of the conversation. And really, at the end of the day, that's what high-functioning teams have. They have people that are very strategic about what they want to accomplish and very intentional about how they're going to accomplish that. What was, to the second part of the question, what was my role on that team? I was the math department chair. So like I mentioned, I hired the right teachers that had the right hearts. Freshman math is a challenging thing to teach, and I had the right people in the right location. Number two, I advocated for the resources, which were both time for us to accomplish these things that I talked about, and FTE, because we had to have intervention teachers, MTSS teachers, that could accomplish the work of working with our students. I recruited the right students to help others, and then just like I plan to do if I get to join the Board of Education, I set up the group for success and I got out of the way. So I set up the policy of here's what we're going to do, and then I let people fly with it. And just so you know the results of that, that year, we were number one in freshman math in the district, and the only time that DCC ever beat TCA in freshman math ever.
Thank you. What would you do as a board member if the whole board votes and makes a decision that you fundamentally disagree with? Describe what your follow-up actions would entail.
Well, 21 years of successful marriage and a lot of 1-1 votes, which don't feel a lot of different than 4-1 votes, has prepared me just to have a different point of view than other people have. Oftentimes, my financial responsibility in wanting to meet 401k goals interferes with my wife's Disney princess dreams of hitting Disneyland and Disney World in 1 year. The overarching thing I want you to hear on this is not a problem. This is part of being on a team. You're going to disagree with the people you work with, regardless of the scenario. Just today, the team I work on, we were discussing if we want to require our college students to buy a physical book, or if we're going to permit them to just rent the e-textbook. And it was a very passionate conversation that ended up at the end of the day actually being a 4-1 vote, and I was the one, and that's okay. We move on. So number one, it's happened before. Like I mentioned in that, I also was on the board of directors of Morning View Metro District. We had an issue with some trees. The other board members voted 4-1. I listened to their perspective. I truly wanted to understand why they felt that way and why they wanted to vote with that. I clearly articulated my position and why I was advocating for the other part. But after the vote, it's key to support the decision outside of the room. After that vote's been taken, that is the end of our work on that issue. We are moving on to other issues the district has and support the decision outside the room, even if you disagree with it. Here's why my fellow board members voted in this way, and here's why they supported it. That's the direction the district's going. Moving on to the next issue. But I do think there's strength in varying perspectives. That's something that my current job teaches over and over and over again, is you don't want to have 4 people from the same career field making a decision. You want to have people from various career fields so they can take in the risk factors that this might offer or the strengths that this might offer from a varying perspective. So I don't think that that's a problem.
I just want to give a time check. You've, I think, been about 16 minutes. We have 40 allotted, and we're a third way through the question.
Okay.
What is your view of policy IJL 1, 2, R, and E regarding library books? What would you seek to change or keep the same?
So I'm going to go through those item by item. So IJL, which is large scale purchase openings from the district. This is where a lot of the book challenges that we have, when you go back to the root cause analysis of the program, like why was that book there or when was that book purchased, is it was in a purchase of when that school opened. And you could imagine the challenge, because we're going to have this with Douglas Valley. It's the first school we're going to open in quite a while, Douglas Valley Middle School. When you need to buy 15,000 books, like nobody is going to sit down and read 15,000 books in one calendar year and ensure that they're all appropriate in what we want. So number one, while this should not be a policy change, I think we're going to have to be very intentional and very strategic about how we allocate resources to this, because this is going to be the first school that we've opened in quite some time. So at the end of the day, that's where we need to be very intentional with it, because that's where many of the books that have been challenged originated in their purchase. IJLE number 13, it was great that we added in that they needed to read the entire material, because many social media sites put out like a quote from the book or just a very small selection of the book that taken out of context sounded really bad. But even when you read the entire chapter, like it fit in the context of that chapter. IJLR1, which is, I want to talk about the family engagement opportunities. Huge kudos to our district tech team for getting that operational for this school year. And kudos to the library team. 99% of our middle school parents filled that out. I mean, the only thing that we've hit at 100% is students registering to come to school. That 99% is a huge bar. So kudos to both teams for getting that in. And then 95% of our parents agreed to allow their students full access to the YA library. So at the end of the day, mission accomplished. Like, that was very successful. We gave parents choice. 95% of our parents made that choice. We gave them that opportunity. I don't see a need to change at this point. I just see a need to be very strategic with now a new school opening and those large book purchases.
What is your understanding of our policy related to clubs in schools, and what would you desire to change or keep the same?
And in answering this question, I believe this is referring to policy JJA. Clubs are where you find your people. And we serve a military community that has students coming in and coming out all the time. It's very important that those students who may be going to their fourth, fifth school in their career, they find their people at their D20 school as fast as possible. So I do believe that we should have as many clubs as are appropriate for our school. Both of my kids have enjoyed clubs, from forensics to Stuco to reading club. Some of the most passionate groups when I was teaching was the physics of Super Smash Brothers, which really is just a video game club, but they did spend time talking about the physics of the video games as they were going through. I led a club. It was a curricular club. Curricular clubs are led by a teacher. The teacher provides guidance. The teacher provides direction, as opposed to JJA then created non-curricular clubs, which there is a licensed teacher supervising, but only supervising. A student would actually lead that, would actually be in charge of it. The only change I'd want to make is leadership training for kids on how to lead a club. That's a big ask for a kid. Like, they're passionate about the physics of Super Smash Brothers, but leading that, being the person in charge of direction, I just think we need to provide students with guidance on how to do that. And Ms. Cons, can I ask for a time check again?
Ms. Shandy, do you know exactly what time we started? I felt like it was a couple minutes before 6:15. Is that accurate?
No, it was right at 6:15, so
Okay.
we have until 7.
Okay.
Okay, and it's 6:33 now. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Academy District 20 continues to review and improve overall security in our schools. What are some of your ideas related to school security and how we could strengthen or improve security in our schools?
Every parent in D20, if they get only one thing each day, it's their kids get home safe from school. And that means picking them up from the bus, dropping them off from the bus. They're safe, but they're safe while they're at school. That is the number one priority of parents, and that should be the number one concern of the district. I'm very proud of the district for prioritizing elementary education. That was a hard choice. That was a choice that the board and superintendent made after the MLO did not pass. I'm very happy that that occurred, because Edith Wolford's a long ways from everywhere else. School in the Woods, which my daughter attended, is a long way from everywhere else. Even if we go to Woodman Roberts, that's not close to where if something terrible were to happen, there might be somebody. Prioritizing that was very important for us to communicate to our parents. That is our priority. I'm very careful with the word policy, and a lot of parents will use the word, well, that's your policy, when really that's just a procedure, or even it just might be a practice. When we look at the research on schools that terrible things have happened in, there's been one overarching theme that continues to come up over and over again, and that's the person got in the room or the building or the school through a prop door, an unlocked door, or a door that there was a rock holding open. And I use the word policy, especially on something that is so nuanced as this, very carefully and very strategically. But I do think we need to add a policy that the superintendent ensure that no outside door for any reason is ever propped open. To communicate to all levels, contractors that often are the ones that prop doors open inadvertently, because they have to go all the way around to get back in the front of the building when really they just got to fix that one sprinkler head. But there be no doubt that this number one cause of these school security issues has no place in Academy District 20, and to communicate at all levels of District 20 that this can never happen for any reason ever. Outside of that, the number one way to prevent these is continued relationships with students. Continued relationships of trust that students have, continuing to use Safe to Tell, which has been a great resource for many threats that we've had. And I do think it is time to start to consider the EVOL Express system. If you've went to the Pepsi Center, if you've been to the Denver Performing Arts Center, if you've been to some large venue that you got in fairly quickly without like having to go through the metal detectors, it uses AI technology to detect weapons that are hidden somewhere in somebody's body, in somebody's bag, in somebody's backpack. We would definitely need to shut off the facial recognition software that is a part of this program, but it's available for that option's available for it. But that's how the Pepsi Center allows somebody famous to come in and for the crowds to get through fairly quickly, or the Avalanche game, it allows you to get through fairly quickly because it's using AI technology to analyze that. Now, obviously, this is not cheap, but we have great grant writers in D20, and we have a community that I feel is very supportive of keeping our kids safe. I think it's time to start looking at that technology to improve our safety in schools, in addition to that policy change that we just be unbelievably clear that there's no reason to ever leave a door propped open, because that is what research continues to show is the root cause analysis of how these people get in our buildings.
Student achievement is a priority for D20. What is your understanding of student achievement in D20, and how would you support our district to increase student achievement and growth?
I was a teacher in the district for 11 years, so I'm very familiar with student achievement in the district, especially in regards to math, which is what I taught. Academy District 20 has been accredited with distinction for 16 consecutive years by the state of Colorado. It's something we're incredibly proud of, and obviously we want to keep going. However, there's room for growth, especially in the area of math. And I want to talk about a refocus that I think we need in the district. Boeing, we all know the struggles that they've had lately, putting safe airplanes in the air and having the confidence of the consumer. Boeing back in the 1990s was strictly an engineering company ran by engineers to engineer the best planes, and people would pay top dollar for the best planes because they were the best and safest plane in the air. And you'd see stickers like, if it's not a Boeing, I'm not going, because Boeing had done such a good job engineering. They've been so laser focused on the one success criteria they had. And I think we need to refocus that in District 20 by prioritizing the classroom. Smoker said in his book, Focus, we are going to focus on what the immediate and dramatic impact we can have on learning. And there is one attribute that has a 2 to 3 times effect size than any other measure, and it is having a highly effective teacher in front of that classroom. It is far more effective than any other measure that any district or any building can take. And reprioritizing that we want to draft in the first round when it comes to getting our staff in our buildings. So I do want to clarify a technicality real quick. Highly qualified is like the state minimum for a teacher. Like now you count as a teacher for our district towards that highly qualified number. There are a variety of ways to get it, but kind of think of it as a pilot that just graduated pilot school. Like they meet the bare minimums, or a surgeon who just graduated from medical school. Are they legally able to operate on you? Absolutely. Are they legally able to fly a 747? Absolutely. If you see that at the front of the cockpit, are you looking for the next flight? Probably. If you see that, if you heard your surgeon just graduated yesterday, are you letting them take the knife under you? Probably not. You're probably seeing what other hospitals are covered by your insurance while you're running out the door. A highly effective teacher is a teacher that changes lives. A highly effective teacher is a teacher that has mastered their craft. That's what makes the difference to the classroom. That's why people move to Academy District 20. It's why they pay $200,000 more for a house than they could buy in District 49 or District 11. We need to return to that being the laser focus of our district. Becky mentioned a number at the last board meeting of $4.5 million in savings from jobs that had never been filled. Just so you're aware what that means for students. At roughly figuring each employee's total compensation cost to the district is $100,000. That's 3.5 million instructional minutes. We need those 3.5 million instructional minutes to have a highly effective teacher in front of that classroom. And excellence attracts parents. When parents go to a building like for choice night, what they're looking for is that aura of excellence, that their student's going to be somewhere that's going to take them to where they want to go. So as we look at the challenges of declining enrollment, putting that prioritization on the classroom, being laser focused on that classroom is how we increase student growth and achievement. And then also we clearly articulate down to the classroom level the specific goals we want to achieve. Because even when I was in the district, many of our goals were we're going to get better at math. Well, when I talk to my team, we're going to get better. Well, where are we going to get better? How much better? Like even just giving the goals to the level of specificity makes it far more likely that you're going to achieve it. Smoker said what gets measured and clearly defined is what gets done. And that's a defining attribute to how I would approach increasing academic growth and achievement in our district.
D20 is a policy governance district. What is your understanding of policy governance and the importance of the board ends? What role would you as a Board of Education member take in accomplishing these ends?
When I started learning to drive, I kept going off the road, and I was lucky that my grandpa was teaching me how to drive. And I was a very immature driver. And in South Dakota, where I grew up, you get a full driver's license at 14 years old. And we're not talking like you can't drive your friends, you can't drive after hours. Like, go get him, Tiger. 14 years old, please don't wreck. When I was starting to learn how to drive, though, I kept making these little mistakes because I kept looking like right there, right to my left, right to my right. And finally, my grandpa said, "Stop the car, pull it over." He said, "You got to look down the road. You got to look at the horizon. You got to look what's coming." when you're starting leadership, you're looking at these little things around you. You know, what assignment are we going to give tomorrow? What's the budget going to be for that? Well, policy governance is looking down the road. You're solving the long-term issues of the district. You're making minor adjustments so that the challenges 3 to 5 years from now, there's policy to address them when they come. So policy governance is setting that long-term goal, not those short-term nuances. Like that parent that you mentioned earlier in the nuance one. Those issues are just not what the board deals with. The board deals with these very high-level issues. And your legacy on the board is policy. I believe one of you said that at the intro meeting a couple weeks ago. So we want to be laser focused on those board ends because those are the outcomes of what we want our children to do. And the policy governance, again, is looking down the road. So it's taking a look at the risks of 3 to 5 years. So we're not looking at like what math test we're going to give next week. We're looking at like what does the risk of declining enrollment come for 3 to 5 years down the road, that next board would already have that policy in place before the issue comes to them. So for example, one of my understandings of policy governance that we want to do is we want to say like we are going to decline enrollment. Our demographer says we're going to decline enrollment. People are having fewer children. So at some point there would be a challenge of what schools are we going to have stay open in our district. And we want to have that conversation now and put those policies in place now so that those people 3 to 5 years from now, down the horizon, down the road, already have that in place to make those decisions when that policy challenge comes up. If we wait until that issue's right in front of us, then it's going to be so impassioned like what Denver's dealing with right now, which really shows a board failure to see what their role is in the conversation. It's to set really that next board up so the policy's in place, so the challenges of today have already been dealt with, especially because then they're dealt with in that rational mode as opposed to like that immediate mode when it's right in front of you. What role would I take in that? Number one, like I said, making sure that we're looking to the long term, not the immediate issue of the day. That we're not looking at like, why did that school have poor performance on a certain issue, but we're looking down the road to what are the challenges that we're just starting to see and what policy might we want to have in place for that challenge so that next board's set up for success with that.
All right, this is question number 11. I think we're going to make it. The global end statement identifies knowledge, skills, and character as priorities across our district. How will you support the district's continued work with character education?
And this is where I think I can go back to that first question. What's the lens I can bring to the board that somebody else may not be able to? When I learned how to be a teacher, I went to the University of Minnesota because I was changing from a math major to now being a teacher. I got hundreds of hours of math. I've taken so many math classes of advanced calculus, and I could prove every theorem you've ever talked about in calc. And then I got hundreds of hours of how to teach math. And I got 0 seconds of how to teach character. The only reference point I had as an educator of how to teach character was after I became a dad myself, and now I was dealing with the challenges of how am I going to raise my kids with characters that or characteristics and character that me and my wife want to instill in our children. So one of the things that I think I could lend to the board is I hear you when you say we want to do this. Teachers need trained on how to. There's not a character building class that they take in college to prepare them for how to do that. And they're experts on it. And that's why I, again, go back to we want to draft in the first round. When you see that teacher that's got that whole package, they're a great teacher in their subject area. They're masters of relationships with kids. And when they see their students not going down the path that they would want them to, making a mistake, lying or cheating or not doing what will be appropriate, that they're confident of having that conversation with the student and redirecting that conversation. And those master teachers are really hard to find. And as a department chair, it feels criminal when they tell you, no, I don't want to work here, or no, I can get paid $5,000 more somewhere else. Because that marginal difference of their ability to change the direction of those kids is worth $5,000 every day of the week. So going back to the question, number one is provide training on how teachers, especially new teachers, because we get so many teachers now that are coming out of the lens of an alternative license. Like they got no training on how to be a teacher. They just have content from when they went to college. So they're trying to balance of how do I balance this job? How do I get kids to understand this content? And then we also want them to have character teaching moments with those children. They're going to need training on that. We're going to need to bring people in that have that. As I mentioned, drafting in the first round is vital because that whole package is really hard to find and very rare to have. Think of the teachers that made a difference in your life that had that whole package that could combine to you. That's not every teacher's classroom you walk into. That's the teachers that have gotten the content down, the mastery down, the learning down, like they are truly masters of this art. And then a level of high expectations clearly communicated across the district. Character is learned in an environment that there is a lot expected out of you. When there are low expectations, and President Bush talked about the bigotry of low expectations when the No Child Left Behind movement started. Like, we can't teach you character if we're not expecting you to do something that you didn't even think you were quite capable of yet. But that's what those master teachers have, is that ability to do that. And then we as board members also have to model that expectation in our meetings. We have to have high expectations of everybody who works for our district. That's how I would support the board ends of character education.
Very good, thank you. How will you work to build trust and confidence among all stakeholders in Academy District 20? Give an example of how you have created this type of culture in another setting.
Absolutely. And the answer is listening. We can disagree, but I will be glad to listen to you out. In fact, several people in the district know because I've sat on the other side of the table when we've disagreed. To give you an example, when at DCC last year, when I was teaching math, I was the department chair. The classroom next to me had 4 different teachers, and I live next to these people. I know them because they know my son, they know my daughter, they work with my wife, they're friends with our kids, and yet they're truly disagreeing of why did my kid's teacher quit? Why does my kid not had a teacher this year? And I'm the face of the Department of Mathematics at this school. So number one is listening, like hearing out. Just like I talked about that parent at the grocery store. Part of it is just listening and saying, I'm glad you have high expectations for us. I'm glad that you expect us to deliver a great teacher in front of your student. And then number 2, reassuring them that while we may disagree on this, I will work as hard as I can, and nobody will outwork me on learning everything about this issue I can. I mean, you can see the binder I brought today. You can see the outlines I have for all the questions. Oftentimes I get made fun of at my house for over preparing for things. I will not get outworked. I will learn everything I can about the scenario so I can bring all that knowledge to the table. So having the confidence that we may disagree, but I will learn everything about this issue I can, and then I will listen to, I will hear you out. Even in just the 2 weeks since finalists were announced, many people managed to find my cell phone number, email address, and wanted to talk, and many of them had a very specific issue that they want dealt with in the district. And first, I listened. I said, what do you want to talk about? What's the issue? I did explain to them, like, the Board of Education is working at this level, and here's how you get a hold of the people at your building that can make the change that you're looking for. But first, I heard them out. And then I said, I'll look into that too, and I'll make sure that administrator follows up with you.
Thank you, Mr. Beckman. We have 10 minutes, last 3 questions.
Yep.
What role do charter schools play within the public school system? What would your stance be as a Board of Education member regarding support of charter schools?
Okay. Charter schools are a part of the culture of choice that exists both in District 20 and largely throughout Colorado. Colorado has these outliers that when you try to paint Colorado with a certain brush, you always have to say but. Like, Colorado is this way, but they're very fiscally conservative. Colorado is this way, but Colorado greatly values school choice. And charters are another choice. In fact, many times I've been asked to get involved in a math science charter school that people want to start in the district. That's another choice that they might have in the district, but charters are another choice. District 20 has a tradition of support that I would want our district to continue for our charter schools. That's based on the percentage of District 20 taxpayers, students that attend those schools. We would want to continue doing that. My kids have greatly enjoyed school choice, from going to DCC, a school I was working at the time, to my daughter attending school in the woods. School choice is part of our character of who we are as a district. But with all of our schools, we also have to make sure that high expectations for both academics and financial are met.
Give an example of how you have built strong community partnerships in your past and the actions you would take as a board member to connect with community partners in District 20.
So this one, I'm going to take the last part first. The second part is, how would you do that? Listening, making relationships with people, hearing their concerns about our district, and knowing that I'll take action while I'm in the boardroom. An example was when I moved to Colorado, I got an offer to teach in several districts in town, and I was shocked at just how much lower teachers were paid than they were in Washington State. Then luckily I was taken aside by a principal named Jim Bailey, who was at DCC at the time. He spent a half an hour talking to me about the tax structure of Colorado and why very few dollars find their way down to students. And one of them he was talking about was property tax values. Then I got my first property tax statement in the mail, which was triple what we were paying in Washington. In addition to in Colorado, we pay income tax. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Low tax. But as we as a district also need to inform, half of my property tax bill goes to a metropolitan district, which I knew absolutely nothing about. I called my realtor. She knew absolutely nothing about. I stopped by the realtor that sold me the brand new construction house that we bought, and she said, I have no idea what that is. And I said, well, why is it half of my property tax bill then? So I had to dig into what is a metropolitan district? Why are they allowed to tax me this much? Why is so many of my tax dollars going to this metropolitan district, which really at the end of the day ends up being reimbursing the developer for costs that they had of developing my neighborhood. However, I needed to know more about this, because if it's half of my property tax bill, which is less than half of what the schools get, like, why is there so many tax dollars going to this? And as you'll find out, very few metropolitan districts are resident controlled. My neighborhood has one of them. In fact, we have the second in El Paso County, Morning View Metropolitan District, that is now fully resident controlled. I did not intend for this to become a community outreach, but as we figured out the challenges of that, and other people who lived in metro districts got a hold of us, it ended up being this community of support that we shared resources and shared information about what a metropolitan district is, how you can take your metropolitan district and have residents in charge of it instead of developers in charge of it, and how you can make that district more financially responsible, because at the end of the day, you're the one paying the bill. So that ended up being an experience where I shared resources, made community connections, actually met several people that I ended up having their kids in class. So we actually had met on a financial level before we even met on an academic level. But that's the kind of support of sharing resources that develops relationships in the community, that develop trust in our district. And that's what I would intend to do as a member of the board of directors here as well.
Okay, Mr. Buckman, last question. It's a little more open-ended. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that we did not ask? And do you have any questions for us?
Sure. Number one, I want you to know I will work incredibly hard to understand and prepare and learn about the issues that we face as a district. My kids attend here. I live here. I've worked here. We've have deep roots in Academy District 20. I greatly care about our students and their outcome, and I will work as hard as I can to prepare to be the best possible board member I can. I will ask the questions to ensure that we have the best outcome for our students as a member of the Board of Education. As a board member in Morning View, that's one of the things I learned, is a lot of it is just asking questions of, well, why did we make that decision? Help me understand how this decision was made. Why is our income going down when it seems like our income should be going up? I will ask the questions to ensure we get the absolute best outcome for our students, because largely in a policy governance model, that's what we do. And we do that so our communities also informed, like, here are the challenges that are in front of our district. In addition, I have that long-term vision. I've greatly thought, just preparing for today, what are the challenges that this board during these next 6 months can take on to ensure the next board that's elected in November and the board after that are set up for success with the right policies. And I do think one of the challenges we have is preparing for an environment of decreasing enrollment. As excellent as we can be as a district, people are just having fewer kids. And there will be a time in a conversation that we need to talk about, do we have the right fit of number of buildings? Because the more buildings we have, that's also that operational cost that affects our ability to pay our staff better and pay our debts off sooner. We as this board need to prepare those policies so that next board is set up for success. So I'm very aware of what being a member of a policy governance model entails, and prepared to take on the challenges that I think the district will face in the next 3 to 5 years that we can set up for success. And my questions to you. It's going to be the same one as I started off with this, so it's a softball. Do you feel that you've been able to accomplish your goals, your whys for being on the board while you've been here?
Great question. Does anyone want to start off sharing?
I think that's a yes and a no, which you probably saw coming. We all come in with big ideas and things we want to get done, and I'm going to change the whole world in the next year. I'm going to turn this whole ship around and blah, blah, blah. And that's just not how it works. There's 5 of us and a superintendent and a large community, a lot of competing ideas. So some things that I believe I was hoping we could get done as a candidate myself, we have. Some are still on the table, and we're driving that direction. There's no, this is turning around a battleship when you're trying to make big changes. Big organization, a lot of moving parts.
As the only appointed member of this board, I didn't have to prepare a platform to run a campaign. As regardless of who gets chosen, they'll have to do that in the next 5 to 6, well, earlier than that, next few months. I would say as the only educator on the board as well, in terms of goals, I think having a teacher voice and giving educator voice to the board is something I have accomplished. Big, audacious goals, I think at this point, seeing through Portrait of a Graduate work. At some point, someone mentioned tonight, board ends and taking a look at character traits and just how many of them there are. And going back to our last meetings and talking about last 2 meetings, our board retreat and looking at that crosswalk of that work. That's to be determined, and that's in our near future, and we're really excited about that. I'm really excited about that. I can't speak about for the whole board. I am personally excited about that work.
It was unexpected to have to work and find a new superintendent. That wasn't foreseen when I came on the board. But I think that situation helped manifest this wonderful partnership, this team one we have to really laser-like focus on our vision, on the desires of the community. Excuse me. So there's a lot of little things, mostly administratively, operationally, that we have worked as a team to help direct that vision, those outcomes to Superintendent Haber, and I think that's been a real big success. And probably about out of time.
Yep, out of time. Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Really appreciate your time and efforts and your family's attendance.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick 5-minute break to hit the restroom or whatever, and we'll come back and debrief. All right, we are back from our break. This is our time to debrief and talk, or we can go straight into a nomination if someone wants to appoint one. Anyone have discussion or want to go straight to nominations?
First of all, just want to, if they're listening online, thank all 4 of our finalists for their very thorough preparation. Just really wonderful to see their heart for students, their heart for this district. Awesome ideas. You know, I have some stars on every one of the finalists. My notes with some great ideas that all 4 of them gave us. I really appreciate that. I really was, as I went through everyone's applications again this morning, and then the interviews reiterated that I was really floored by Ms. Payne's focus, expertise. I mean, just so extremely extensive. So I didn't expect a few days ago when I had first gone through them to feel quite that strongly about her.
I agree. I think her experience and level of professionalism and throughout the nation, but also internationally with what she's done and could bring to the table is incredible. And I think would be such a tremendous asset to this team at this time. So I would agree with that.
Whenever I do things like this, I go back to how I taught kids to write a thesis, right? So an introduction paragraph for sure. So I use a funnel and start broad and then get really specific, which is the way my brain works. I've gone back to, I also reread applications. I know, Nicole, you had shared that today. And the need, this is a 6-month position, right? And what is our need on the board right now? So this is like where we're and having a diverse board is important. The most successful boards are diverse in nature. As someone who was appointed, it's information via fire hose, right? So those first couple days are clear your calendar, meet with everybody, bring a notebook, and get it all figured out. And I had the benefit of being in this district for the past 16 years, right? As both a parent, volunteer, teacher, para, etc. I'm going to stay broad for a minute. I think the most important thing personally to me is a heart for kids. We heard that from a lot of the applicants, right? I think in terms of the onboarding process and how quickly we can get somebody up to speed, that's actually that's a fact. Like we need to make sure this person's ready to go. I think everyone's capable. I think having knowledge of the district is important, and it's also going to give you an edge, right? So having worked in it, having been part of it around parents, all of that. Again, all of our applicants have that in one shape, one form or another. And then prior board work. You know, I think it really helped me to have been on a school board since 2021. Like I've been, no policy governance. That's how we operate. Again, a lot of our candidates applicants know that piece as well. So now we have to get more specific, right? And I think we could go down the path of okay, every single answer to each question and split hairs. Overall, I would agree that it's hard for me to leave a national security, school security expert on the table. I would also like to say, I mean, as we look at each of the applicants, we've got a school security expert, a clinical psychologist. He's a doctor, psychiatrist, and veteran, a strategist, statistician, and an educator, right? And each one of them brings just a unique set of skills to the table. What is the need? And I'm asking this of the board. What is the need for the next 6 months? to help round out our board.
I don't disagree that it's obviously it's a 6-month appointment. And we can't control what happens in November. I think though, if you can look at long-term, is there a candidate who could do both? That would be the most efficient use of our time. If I say that correctly, if there's a candidate who could possibly fulfill both, I think that would be most effective for this board.
First thing that comes to my mind of what our need is on the board as a board. One of our candidates mentioned that positivity just produces better outcomes. So really someone who's going to be a part of this team with positivity and the Team One spirit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Got to have that. This is actually, this is a very difficult call for me. And hopefully the 4 candidates are listening, all extremely impressive, all very well prepared. I don't know that I've ever, and I've interviewed a lot of people, I've hired a lot of people, I've fired a lot of people. I don't know that I've ever had 4 candidates come in and sit before me in an interview situation that were as impressive as those 4. They really knew their stuff. And you make a very good point, Lauren, Mrs. Yanez, about the diversity of thought that we have in front of us. So Mr. Waldrep, being a clinical psychiatrist, I have no idea what that world is about. None whatsoever, completely confused. Mr. Beckman, being a math teacher, I tried to avoid him when I was in school. Didn't want to be in his class. I do okay with math, I'm not great. And Mrs. Chukas and I are fellow Westsiders. I share in her passion for some of those things. So these are extraordinarily close. When I look at what does our board need moving forward, I think we've already taken some steps to begin hardening our schools and not having soft targets, because the last thing, Mr. Beckman's point, I believe it was Mr. Beckman who said the one right and the one thing that every parent cares the most about and that we have to deliver is that their kids get home safely every day. Couldn't agree more. We've never had an incident like that in District 20, to the best of my knowledge. In the years that I've lived here, never would want to have anything like that. And Mrs. Payne coming onto the team and adding that leg of strength is very powerful. And I would have no difficulty supporting her nomination.
I think nominations are now in order for an appointment to the Board of Education. Does someone want to nominate a candidate?
That was Nicole, right?
Anybody?
I would like to nominate Mrs. Susan Payne for appointment to the Board of Education.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Payne is nominated for appointment to the Board of Education. As many are in favor of Mrs. Payne for appointment to the Board of Education will, as their names are called, answer aye. Those opposed will answer no. Mrs. Ruckman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Cons,
Aye.
Mr. Wilburn,
Aye.
Mrs. Yanez,
Aye.
Mrs. Shandy,
Aye. The ayes have it. Just want to make sure I'm saying everything I'm supposed to say. The ayes have it, and Mrs. Payne is appointed to the Board of Education. We need a motion to approve Resolution 219-23, approval of appointment to the Board of Education. Whereas at special meeting of the Board of Education of Academy District 20, held March 20th, 2025.
May.
Oh, sorry, I did say March because it says March. Apologize. All right. May 20th, 2025, a vacancy on the Board of Education was declared. All right, let me reread that because the vacancy was made March 18th. So let me start over. Whereas at a special meeting of the Board of Education of Academy District 20 held March 18, 2025, a vacancy on the board was declared. And whereas the board was solicited interest within the district community for potential candidates to apply to fill the vacancy. And whereas the board has accepted applications and interviewed candidates and is now prepared to appoint a person to fill the vacancy. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of Academy District 20 as followed, that the Board of Education hereby appoints Mrs. Susan Payne to fill the vacant director position on the board, and that the Secretary of the Board is hereby authorized to cause a certificate of appointment to be delivered to Mrs. Payne and to send a duplicate of the certificate to the Colorado Department of Education. And that Mrs. Payne shall take and therefore sign the oath of a director within 10 days from the delivery of the certificate. And that Mrs. Payne shall also sign the affidavit acknowledging that she is aware and will comply with the confidentiality requirements and restrictions applicable to executive sessions as required by Colorado Revised Statutes 22-32-108-5A.
Moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cons,
Aye.
Mr. Wilburn,
Aye.
Mrs. Yanez,
Aye.
Mrs. Shandy.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned.